Hi everybody, we're live according to YouTube, and let us know in the chat if you can hear us. If I should probably do some audio checks while all the other headset. Hang on a sec.
Hello.
Okay, I just wanted to see what I sounded like. I'm a little bit quiet, aren't I? I think I could probably come up a bit. Doing it on a wireless mic. Hi, Lisa. We're streaming, so no swearing.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can.
Am I live?
Hello.
Yeah.
We're live, yes.
Hello.
1, 2, 3, 2 decibels. Yeah, that should be better. All good here. Okay. Andrew, let's check you out.
Yep. 1, 2, 3. You should be able to hear me.
Yeah, you're clear.
I'm hoping I'm coming through clear.
I think you're about the same level as me. And Lisa?
Yeah, it looks lovely and warm for that. It's really cold here.
We're sweating here, both of us. And we're in different parts of this country.
And I've got a jumper on, 2 jumpers for the first time. And I thought, stuff it, I'm not wearing a dress, I'm wearing a jumper. It's cold.
That feels like torture wearing a jumper.
Mind you, Lisa, it doesn't get that cold in Cornwall. It's not like you know you're living in like Skye in Scotland or something. So
you would no right. You're wrong because we've got the breeze off the sea and Rans. You wouldn't even be able to take Cornwall. Let's be honest. You'd be moaning in 5 minutes. Oh, it's cold. Yeah, for a holiday for 2 minutes in the summer. It
wasn't in the summer. It was in, I think it was autumn. But yeah, okay, fair enough. I wasn't there in the winter, and I'm only pulling your leg.
Snowing. I am glad it's not snowing. Especially
Okay.
as my car has given up the ghost.
Now we were waiting on Andrew, the other Andrew, Andy. So I'm not sure if he's coming or not. We did ask him to come. But that's okay. And we were also waiting on another person and we weren't sure if he was going to come. So we might just be... By the way, this mic is different. So let us know in the chat if you like it or dislike it. The benefit of this is I can turn around and do things and I'm not sort of sounding like I'm traveling down a corridor. So the mic can move with me, which is a good thing. The only thing I don't like about it is if I go down like this, it gets very intimate. I'm not very...
You could do ASMR.
Yeah, I could. I'm not very used to using like lav type setups, but anyway. Yeah, mic sounds fine. Cool. He know nothing. Fair enough. Good to see Darren there. Yeah, so... 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we should be able to run the show with this. And if Andy turns up, so be it. We've got 10 minutes or so to wait for him. That can work. Shall I just quickly message him? Where is he? Okay, everyone's messaging Andy right now. He's probably getting hammered. Okay, we are good. Okay, cool. So I'm just trying to sort out a million things at once here. Now, for those who are watching right now and thinking, what the hell is this show all about? This is the pre-show. So we're not even really in a show yet. This is just us getting everything set up. It's nice to have you back, Lisa, too. You're kind of like one of the old original crew here.
Do you like my new backdrop?
I do.
I hurriedly did yesterday.
I actually
I had
do.
to put it all back together. The
very
studio
nice.
all back together. There's a big load of junk in front of me you can't see, of carnage of equipment not plugged in and just, not where it should be.
Everyone seems to be
No,
doing
it's
that, don't they? So Andrew said that he's trying to connect, so that's fine. Let's just double check to see what trouble he's having. He is trying to connect. I can see him trying to connect. Which one is he trying to connect as though? That's the $60,000 question. No, that's correct. That's the right one. But the connection's not happening for him. Okay, so let's just wait for that to happen. At least he's trying. That's the main thing. He said his computer's not working too well today. Cool, cool. All right, so yeah, what we do is about... There he is. See?
Oh.
You got to trust me.
What? What? That bloody camera. Right, one sec.
You're on the other camera.
Oh, I don't know what's going on.
You do sound good,
I
though.
like that camera, though.
I actually don't mind it.
I like
because you're
that
kind
camera.
of... You're not looking
Good to see you.
down on an angle. You're kind of looking straight ahead, which is good. Makes you look younger.
I can leave it like that. It's just that the camera it makes me look younger, does it? No, I prefer the other one. Sorry.
I tell you what, I hope my internet holds up. Because there could be one more person coming on.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's much better.
See, that one's not full screen, though. See, the other one was full screen, wasn't it, Lisa?
Well, it was because it's right here and that one's up there.
was.
So.
No, but that one's like... that one's a lower resolution. But, okay, whatever. Whatever you're happy with.
Oh, I see what you mean. I'm in a square box. It's probably a setting that I've clicked and I've no idea what setting it is. Oh, I never understand these bleeding things.
HD, widescreen, make me look beautiful. That one.
No, it just has loads of all the fun numbers. If it
The
just
young
Five
gun.
is the best.
if it said rectangular box rather than square box, I'd understand what it meant. But when it says, 640 times 128, I don't know numbers.
So
numbers they just make me go.
19, what is it, 1900 by 1080 is the one you're after? If you can do that one.
900 by 1080. Oh, right.
1900 by 1080.
That probably is a different setting. I'm not going to bother trying it now. I'll just be in a square box.
All right, we're happy with
You
that.
think,
is fine.
you'd think it'd all happen automatically these days. It'd just all be programmed in, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you would, but no one
So-
talks to each other. They're all different companies.
Well, yeah. Who knows?
It's like I don't believe why on Windows were you still using ASIO for All, a free music program that somebody put out like years ago. Else nothing will work in Windows. Why is that still? Why is Windows still letting that happen? Wait, is that? Have I got it wrong? Then?
Hang on, let me just give Bill a call. I don't know, Lisa. I don't work for Microsoft.
I just got a new Windows machine, and I was like, "Are we still installing this?" And yes, we are.
I don't
So-
use it because I've got an interface that's got like more connections than I can poke a stick at. But I mean, if you had like multiple interfaces, I can understand why people would use it.
Marshall still needs to use it, and I'm like, Oh, anyway, it was a
Well,
surprise.
Unfortunately, Inky,
Going from Windows to Mac. Sorry, yeah, I've been spoiled. I grew up on Windows, forgot how hard it was, went to a Mac where it just does everything. And then you go, what are these drivers you are talking to me about? It's just...
I like it. I like it because it's a lot more cutting edge and it's a lot more easy to, to put the newest and latest and greatest things on. That's why I like it. I still have a Mac right here though, so you can't say I'm either sitting on either camp because, for me it's more about the money that you spend as opposed to the tiny little idiosyncrasies of an operating system. They've both got things that frustrate me about them.
That is why I've just bought a Windows machine, to be honest.
Because of the money.
Than the Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like
I have
10th of
no
the price,
idea.
really.
Yeah. It just does not make sense at the moment. Mind you, though, the new silicon, what do they call it? The M1s. My daughter's just got one. I haven't tested it out yet. She's got it for school. It was really, really cheap. It was like $1,000, MacBook Air, and lightning fast as far as I've seen so far. Haven't really put anything to the test yet, but geez, anyone who gets one of those new, I'm thinking about getting a new Mac Mini, because that Mac Mini there has been there since 2012. 8 years, 9 years, whatever. Probably 8 years actually. Some time during the course of this year it will hit to 9 years. But yeah, that's a long time for a computer to be running without any real major issues. I think the only thing I ever had to do to it was replace the memory in it. Memory died, and that was pretty cheap to do. So that's one thing I guess is good about Macs, Apples, is that they're pretty reliable. Do it, yeah.
Unless they do an OS upgrade.
Well, don't forget though, the new Mac Minis are only like, what are they in England, guys? What are they, about
No
600
idea. I
pounds?
haven't even looked.
They're really cheap. They are really cheap.
Well, they're not. They are if you can get them. Because I've been looking. I think we talked about this ages ago, and I really tried to get one, but yeah, it's getting them. They're quite hard to get hold of.
Well, I can get them. Famous last words. Next time I go into the order, I can't get them anymore. No, I checked like 2 days ago. I can get them. So,
see, conversations like this fry my head, because this computer that's sitting in front of me, I've had since 2011, and it has been the single most reliable computer I have ever bought. It's been absolutely fine. It's now really beginning to struggle with the modern stuff. Like recently, the last few times I've tried to connect to this, it's been a bit of a ball ache. It's really not wanted to play along. But so now I'm thinking, right, okay, fairly soon, new computer.
Yeah.
But
which one do you get?
I was just thinking, I was going to get another Windows computer, because that's what I'm familiar with, what we use at work and stuff like that. And
you'll get better bang for your buck. Do it.
Get a Mac Mini. Get a. No, I'm going. Oh, what? No, I have no idea. No, I probably will.
I've got to have both for my work, Andy. So that's why I've got them. But if you have a choice and money's kind of an issue, I would be getting another Windows one, because you're used to it. So you won't be putting yourself into sort of any weird place if you do it that way. But Macs are good. Look, there's nothing like Lisa said. There's nothing hard about them. It's just it is a bit of a different world. It will take you a little while to get used to. And there's things that Windows do that Mac doesn't, and vice versa. So,
Well, quite.
No one can win. Someone should make, there's Linux. Someone should make a hybrid. Yeah, there's Linux. All right.
I wonder why things like that never really took off, because, there seems to be a lot of positives about
the power
that
of the dollar,
system,
mate. The power of the dollar.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah,
we are 2 minutes away from me to hit that big magic button. I'm just keeping an eye on whether a certain person's woken up. No. Okay. He'll come on, surely. Right. Okay. 2 minutes before. Guys who are watching, yes, this is a show about synthesizers and all that sort of stuff. We are going to start the show in about 1 minute, according to my clock. I'm not going to put you through letting you watch 1 minute of 47 seconds of my crappy music. I'll wait till we get to about 10 seconds in, and we'll do the countdown. I mean, God, that'd be horrible, wouldn't it? Making you listen and vomit all over your screen to my music. There'll be so many synths thrown at the screen at that moment, wouldn't there? Okay, we have, what do you reckon? 15 seconds in, we should do it then. You ready, set, go. Well, it's another Saturday. Big hello to everyone who's joined the stream. If you're new here, don't forget to jump into chat. What's this all about? You're probably wondering. Well, we're doing a show this week on master clocks, and we're going to get into that definitely, so stick around. But this show does have regular segments. If you are new, hopefully you'll enjoy them. They are kind of like a little bit of a cult community here. We do these kind of crazy segments. But before we do, we'd like to say hello to everybody. And I'm going to do a round robin this week, and I'll start with ladies first. So a big hello to you, Lisa. How's your week been? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I did some decorating behind me and put my studio back together. So it's been a good week.
Wow. I love that. It's like a
and I also
very
managed...
Druid-esque type sort of thing, that isn't it? With the tree and the lights.
There was another one, but I got that for my daughter, which I liked more. It was more mushroomy and a bit more fairy tale. But the most important reason I've done it all is so I can live stream. I can get the camera to live stream the equipment behind me now, which before I could never do. So I could never do a live stream or a premiere, a live premiere. So that's all ready to go now. So that's a big achievement, really, because I've done that about 3 times and never figured it out. So it's been a good week, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, hitting the button to the next of that one, we should have Andrew Me. How you going, buddy? How's your week been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, very good. I've been busy this week buying, I think, doing lots of repairs. I think I picked up a second microcorg, which I'm going to blend 2 into 1. And then just been doing lots of sort of tech things this week, which is good, actually. We're in lockdown again, so I couldn't go to my Synth meetup tonight, which is a little disappointing, but I'm sure we'll get there next time, which will be really good.
Yeah, it's a shame about that. That's awesome. And also you've got something exciting to show us. Or don't tell us what it is, because I know what it is. Something exciting to show us in the show.
Later.
Yes, definitely.
Later.
Andy, we'll call you Andy, so that way we're not going to get confused. How's your week been? Good to see you.
Oh, what a strange week. Well, oddly enough, in spite of lockdown and schools being shut, I've been in work every day this week, as it happens for various reasons. But it's been very strange, but also quite enjoyable. And I've also got something new as well, which has landed. So I can whack it around in the air now if you want, or we can wait. It's entirely up to you, Rans.
Oh, go on. Let's go. Let's have a look. Let's go full screen on you.
It's not very impressive. It's not very impressive right now, but hey,
I think it will be. Here we go. Here it is.
It's very empty. It's very empty. There you go. Got it.
If you're wondering what it is, it's a Behringer Go case. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh.
Congratulations.
So he has now bitten the wonderful cherry of Eurorack.
the first modules, I mean, in theory, they could possibly arrive this afternoon, but I'm expecting them sort of early part of next week, the first things to go in. And then my plan is sort of 1 module a month and keep it sort of just 1 module a month and things. I mean, oddly enough, I mean, today's topic fits right in with the way my very first modules are actually going to be. That's going to be part of that. Because one of them is the 960 sequencer, which hasn't landed yet, but hopefully it will. And that, obviously, then I'll have to. That will rely on clocks and all sorts of things, and yes, it's a whole new world. But I'm actually really very excited about it,
yeah.
Okay,
I'm excited about you getting it too.
Tingly, goosebumpy feeling. Yeah, I'm very much. It's strange. I'm actually far more excited and on pins about that than I was about, say, the MPC up here, because that's also very technical and brain fry. I mean, I'm getting a lot better with that now, obviously, but because I've had plenty of time with it and been learning it, but. The excitement thing is this sort of a completely new world that people go, oh no, Andy, you'll never emerge and it'll cost you. Well, I think a bit at a time, and we'll see what happens.
Prove them wrong. Prove all the naysayers wrong. That's what I say. Do whatever makes your boat float. Yeah. Fantastic. That's actually good news.
Robbie Puricelli said he said, oh no, man down. So
I saw that last week. Yeah. Well, all of us have some sort of relationship to control voltage. So, whether it actually be physical Eurorack cases or whether it just be something at the back of a synth, we all kind of have some sort of relationship to it. So it's no big deal, really. Anyway. Okay, we should move right along. We should probably start our segments. But before we do that, because I always forget, we should probably say hello to the chatties, because they're pretty important, aren't they, guys? So who have we got here? Wow, lots of people already. God, I hope we don't screw up tonight. I hope you don't think this is going to be a professional show, people. We're just users, just like you. Okay, starting with Wigu. He got the Guernsey this week. Big hello to you, mate. Native VS was second. ATOZ or ATOZ. Big hello. ASIO heads there. Inverted Popes. And who's next? Axel Soft's there. Mike Delic. Human Error. Sasquatch. The Electronic Composer. Max there. Sergio's there. Awesome. Keeping going. Darren's there. Big DTH. How you going, mate? Good to see you. Who else? I always forget people. John Shea. No one's ever thrown their synth at the screen yet, though. Future World Machines is there. Who else? Sing out if I've missed one. Lapis Lapis. Gosh. D Best. Good to see you, mate. Scrolling. Couch Camper. That's a great nick, that one. That's pretty much what I did when I was younger. Okay. JP Page 2. I think I've got everybody, unless someone snuck in right towards the end. And WW snuck in. Laird Kilbarchin snuck in. And I think that's it. Fantastic. Big hello to everyone anyway. So there's 40 odd people in. That's all right. That's a good start. I can't complain with that. Fantastic. Right, we shall get stuck into the show. Okay, so first off the ranks, we're going to do a bit of humour, and hopefully this will turn you off humour for the rest of your life. Yes, you have reached the end of the internet where these memes tend to come up. Don't ask me why, but you've got Darth Volker. And if we do a bit of a zoom in on his chest there.
I like that one.
That is good. Okay. Next, we have got select all images with David Gilmour. Oh, good. This guy, I feel sorry for this guy, hey. And now I'm also feeling sorry for David Gilmour because he kind of looks similar. Oh, dearie me. If you're watching, Dave, just get your VCS3 out and just ignore me. Right, okay, moving right along. I thought everyone should buy one of these because, I mean, gosh. Inky, you're pretty cold right now. A hoodie like this would get you, go down to the pub with this on. Yeah, I mean, it's an old saying, you'd get played, but yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, anyway. Moving right along.
FAO6.
Oh, hold on, it's got a D-beam on it though, so yeah.
I'll go back. Hang on, let's go back. D-beam?
The D-beam bit saves it.
It does.
You can sit there and wave at your chest.
Oh, geez, that's
What are
good.
you doing?
Now people are going to buy it because it's got D-beam. Right, so this is the last one, and just so people know that this is what you are when you're a producer, and this is what you are when you're a producer during quarantine. So I don't know if anyone can work that out. That one's pretty
There's not
obvious.
enough mess at the bottom.
Yeah, he's got a pretty clean.
Change this camera angle.
He's got a pretty clean studio, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's too clean.
It's too clean.
It's a mirror image, Inky.
What was your favourite? Inky's going to buy the jacket, I'm sure.
Yeah, Darth Volker for me, but that jacket was cool.
Yep. I've had that jacket sitting in my
Yeah.
meme folder for about 6 months, and I just haven't had a chance to bring it into the show. So it had floated around for a while. Okay, moving right along. That was the end of that segment. We shall go to this segment. This one's going to be a bit longer than normal because we've got a bit to get through, and that's actually good fun. It's the news! Yay! there's a fair bit. As I said, we're going to start off with the first bit of news, and that is this little thing here. Isn't it gorgeous? What a cute little thing, hey? This is the converter Converter E1 by SonicSmith. It's a pitch tracking expandable oscillator alongside a studio preamp. Now, I really was quite, I don't know, taken back when I saw this. Actually, the only time I saw this was actually an ad on my Facebook feed. So I don't even know if they've product launched this recently or if this is literally the product launch. But anyway, what we'll do is, I do think I've got a video for this. So let's tee the video up. And my dog is sneezing in the background. Let's go across to the video.
Hi, I'm Noam Levy from SonicSmith, and in this video I'd like to introduce you to the Converter E1. The Converter E1 is a very versatile and expandable digital controlled oscillator. You can control its pitch from audio, from CV, and even from MIDI if you decide to expand it with a digital expander. Every time you power up your Converter E1, it's going to work in audio control mode. That means that the internal oscillator is going to stay frequency locked to the input audio's pitch, giving you control voltage outputs for pitch, envelope, and gate.
All right, so that's getting pretty cool, but I thought I'd mention too that it merges kind of studio with Eurorack in the fact that you've got an ultimate synth channel, which it's pitch controlled DCO alongside a preamp, many features for the instruments. You can even put vocals into this, so it could kind of work like a vocoder in a way, but not a vocoder. But what I do like about it is it's kind of giving you that free ability to put any sort of audio signal in there, and then that becomes part of an oscillator, which then you can merge into your Eurorack world. It does have MIDI if you get the expansion modules. It's $390 US. It's available on the 21st of March. Let's get a quick reaction from ladies and gentlemen. Who wants to have a quick word about this thing?
Stony silence.
Actually,
Go on, Andy.
I want to have a word about the other module in a second, the MIDI module, but I'll let other people talk first.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I'd like to know why a guitar playing a synth still sounds like a guitar.
Well, it's oscillators, really, isn't it? And you're just changing the pitch based on the way the frets
Yeah,
work.
and it's the way that it's the way it bends and the choice of notes that they land on. I think it's very clever. I think it's very clever how it does it, and if it manages to do it without delays and things, that's really quite an accomplishment. Because I think previous devices that work like this, didn't they have to sort of scan a full waveform cycle before it actually managed to pick up the pitch, and there was always like a little bit of a delay. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're a guitarist, that it's probably a handy little thing, but I can't see me being that
So
bothered.
not just guitar though. Any audio can go into it. So you could actually, if you had to pick up on a violin, or if you had to pick up, or you'd have an acoustic piano with a microphone. So really, any audio goes into that, and that will control it. And I'll link the video in the description later, and you guys can go and check it out. It's sonicsmith.com is where you can find it. They've got other synth-related products too. But we'll quickly go to Andrew, because he wanted to talk about the MIDI side.
Yeah, look, I found that the MIDI module that they've got, I can't even remember the name of it, but they've mentioned that it's going to be MIDI 2 compliant. And I did actually ask them about this, and I think it's because they're using higher resolution on their, they want to use higher resolution on their so they're using like 16-bit resolution on their actual CVs and stuff like that, which is really good.
Yeah.
But when I tried to push them about actually what part of MIDI 2 they were going to do. I don't think they've got a clear idea at this stage, but they do have it in their advertising. So I'd be curious to see long term where they end up going with that. And just quickly, Rance, when you're mentioning other instruments, I would really like to see stringed instruments, as you talk about violins and cellos and stuff like that. That would be actually very cool, I think.
It would.
You'd get some very interesting effects, especially if you were trying to work with other people in those kind of live settings. That'd be a really good way of actually bringing them in. But yeah, interesting. But I'd like to know a lot more about what the actual
MIDI stuff, yeah. Well, I did reach out to SonicSmith, and so they do know that I'm showing it on the show today. So you never know, they might be lurking. If they're not, they can leave a comment in the show afterwards on the replay. One thing to quickly sort of mention before we move on to the next thing, this is not the first product that's done this. There are Eurorack modules that will take audio input and track based on audio signals. So guys in the chat will probably mention what those modules are, because there's quite a few people in the Eurorack land that are quite well versed in it. But I just thought this was quite well implemented. One of the things I really enjoyed about this one is it had the unison, so you could actually take an oscillator from another synth as well as the audio input and unison both, and it kind of really made a thick sound, which is interesting. It's like layering, but on an audio rate sort of thing. Who knows what else this can do? I mean, this may, instead of it being an audio source, this could be a modulating source. So you could actually have violin used as a modulation source to something. Because remember, it's an oscillator at the end of the day, so you can use it as either audio or as a modulation. But anyway, we should move on. Because we've got lots to get through. The second one is another kind of semi-Eurorack modular type product. And this one is by LA Circuits. LA Circuits are kind of new to the scene, I believe. They have brought out actually a whole bunch of new products. This one I'm going to show on the show, and there's a whole bunch more you can go check out. But this is the Chronograph sequencer. And what I thought we'd do is, before I start gabbing on, let's get the video lined up and we'll have a little look at this one. And let's go. Showing a lot of their products here, but there's not a lot of videos out yet with these guys, but let's have a little chat about what this is. Okay, so the Chronograph sequencer, let's go back to here. The Chronograph sequencer is a 3 rows of 8 steps of CV generator with individual CV ranges and outputs for each internal clock with external input, pulse output, which we'll get to in a sec, which is actually pretty cool. Let me just make that full screen for you guys. It's got a frequency detector and a divider circuit that generates square wave signals from the frequency transmitted to its signal input jack. The clock divider also provides 5 outputs, offering polyrhythmic options. And you'll see that in the far right-hand section where it shows polyrhythmic clock divider. You can see it's all kind of divided up nicely. Quite well laid out. What else? A sequential switch also allows you to select specific inputs to be routed to module change. So it's quite an interesting sequencer. I don't know if I've seen anything exactly like this before. I think there's a few cool little surprises on here. Maybe someone in the chat might know about it, but kind of does look a little bit Buchler-y in the blues and the silvers, and I don't know. Get a quick reaction from who wants to start on that one? Who's into control voltage sequences? I know bottom right-hand corner man is, and we have been muted. Sorry, guys.
Ooh. Well, you say I'm into it. I love the idea, and I'm very much looking forward to finding out. And I did see a picture of this in the week, and and I thought, yeah, ooh, this is nice. And then you put it in your show notes, and I had a look, and yeah, it's the sort of thing that really does, it just gives me sort of slightly goosebumps. Yeah, so. But I'm going to find out what the 960 is like first before I investigate something much more advanced. Certainly. Now, I think Wagyu put $1,800 in as a price tag. Is that right? Is that how much?
That is correct.
Yeah, well, that's a shame because it's way out of money. But then again, you've got a lot of stuff, different things in there. Like if you think about, there's like half a dozen different modules contained within that, not just a step sequencer. So I suppose it's a lot of modules, but the question is it something that you need? Some people will be going, yeah, but then again, there are other sequencer boxes out there that do sort of similar things for probably less money. I mean, even something like the now I've forgotten his name, Cyclonics. Is that the Cyclonic sequencer? The big thing that Mylar Melodies has just got that. Anyway, so. If it's $1,800, it's way too expensive for me at this point.
Anyone else want to make a comment about the Chronograph sequencer, or should we move on to the next? Move on to the next. Cool. 1, 2, 3, bang! Another bit of Eurorack. Jeez, I'm showing Eurorack, aren't I? But these things are coming out, so you've got to show them. This one, I love this. Here we go. Let's see how my Russian goes. This is the KOSMIЧЕСКИЙ ШУМ, or it's known as space noise. It's a 12 HP module that consists of 2 separate Jupiter Storm-like oscillator units. Now, there's a video, I believe, so we should probably check this out before I gas bag too much. Here we go. Interesting video.
Друзья мои, получены организованные сигналы из космоса.
Для того, чтобы осуществить эту космическую программу, советским инженерам пришлось создать сложнейшие системы для автоматического исследования космического пространства.
Исследования показывают, что его структура меняется. Это следствие, наблюдаемое проявление конвекции.
Но не автоматическим автоматом. Программу задает и управляет человек.
Большой труд многих коллективов, бессонные ночи, сотни исследований, испытаний. Все это вручается в руки космонавтов.
Now, most of those sounds that you could hear that were kind of glitchy and squealy and kind of that sort of sound, that were from this, and you heard that sort of regular beat, that wasn't from this. I'm pretty sure. So the whole purpose of this thing is it's basically 14 separate outputs based on 6 square core oscillators with pitch control, but there's no voltage per octave pitch control. So these are like free running oscillators. And in addition, there's 8 outputs with modulation sources and feedback control, which is where you're getting that kind of crunchy and gritty sort of sound that you heard. There's also a bit of a cool mode, which is called singularity mode, and that modulates both the left and the right side. So it's kind of got 2 Jupiter Storm modules kind of, and you can sort of modulate both of them together. It's pretty crazy, this module. If you don't think it's crazy, then I think you're probably living in crazy land. But it's not for the faint-hearted. And I think if you're kind of after that sort of real free sort of wheeling Eurorack module, this is going to be pretty awesome. Sort of get you out of that sort of pitched per octave sort of world, which we tend to get locked into. Does anyone want to make a comment about this one quickly?
I think if I was going to go Eurorack, that's the kind of module I'd get. Something that's just ridiculous that I can't do on couldn't do on other machines I've already got. I like the fact that it's out there. It's great.
Yeah, and the fact that you can't read any of the writing on it.
And it's not that expensive. Yeah.
No, it's only,
it's good.
You're right, $250 US.
Yeah.
Well, that's not bad.
For a module, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and those sounds are out there, aren't they? They're proper wigged out. And a bit like Andrew's just said, I do like the idea of eventually things which you can't do on other synthesizers. I'm going to establish sort of synthesizer voice first, and then definitely things. I mean, things like the Pamela Ceteritas Alta have always tweaked my fancy, and Platts and these things which are just a bit different. But that one, yeah. Again, I watched the videos of that and just thought, yeah, this is great. I mean, it's again, it's a bit like throbbing gristle in a box, which has got to be a good thing.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's kind of got that bizarreness, but I think with that kind of undertones over sort of like a solid kind of nice tight rhythm with a bit of swing, that would sound really, really cool, I reckon. Kind of what they did in a way in that video was kind of, you had some sort of grounding with the rhythm, and then that was just kind of floating about, wasn't it? And, you know, if anyone ever saw you use one of these and they're saying, oh, you're just one of those bleeps and blop people, yeah, this would be the epitome module for bleeps and blops, wouldn't it? Rightio.
Why else do you do your rack?
Exactly. Bleeps and blots and flashing lights. We have also got some news from Behringer. This was released a little while ago now, but I thought I'd mention it because I do actually love this synthesizer that they are planning on remaking. Well, they've actually remade one, haven't they? Because that's the prototype. So,
yeah, me too. It's delicious, though.
Excuse me, I would definitely have a nice glass of red with this thing. This is a beautiful... The RSF Kobol is probably one of my favourite synths of all time, and the only problem with them is that there's very, very little of them out there in the world because they just didn't make enough, and they didn't have the benefit of that sort of knowledge of you know, marketing that these other companies had. But anyway, let's just have a little chat about this. There's not really any information given by Behringer. All they've said is it's a prototype, and you can see a little bit of the photo, I guess. But one thing I do know is that these have amazing bottom end. The square wave bottom end on this will just pop subwoofers and clubs. It is literally just so beautiful. Like, it's nothing you've ever heard. And they say the Moog's got a good bottom end. The Mini Moog's got a good bottom end. This has also got a different but good bottom end as well. But the other thing I like about this is the RSF Kobol has that continuous variable waveform molding, and it was pretty unique in its day. They've got pretty fancy looking knobs on the original too. So I've noticed on the prototype they've used the same knobs, so that's actually pretty cool. And I hope they do that when they do release it, because those knobs are actually quite unique. You can see them, it kind of looks like they've got, you know, 2 feet and a nose, if you can sort of see what I'm talking about. But yeah, do you reckon it will be a poly Kobol, a mono Kobol, maybe a para Kobol? Yeah.
Well, RSF did make a poly Kobol. They did make a polyphonic version of it. Again, they're even rarer. I mean, there might only be half a dozen of those in the world, and I don't ask. Vince Clarke might have one. But I think just the very fact that they've hinted it, I think it's very tempting. I mean, like you, I mean, it's been one of those sort of mystery synths for a long time, the RSF Kobol. I mean, Jean-Michel Jarre had one and used it a lot. And when you hear them being played, there's a few videos out there in YouTube land of it, and it does sound fantastic. It really is just a beautiful sounding synthesizer. So if Behringer really are doing this, and they, as I've said before, if they capture the general essence of it, then it would be very tempting.
Yeah. Now, do you guys anyone else want to make a comment about this, Andrew?
Yeah, I must admit, when I initially saw this, I kind of initially went, oh no, not another one. And I was a bit disparaging of it. And then I actually, and I didn't know much about the RSF because it's not one that I'd come across much. And so I had a bit of a look on YouTube and had a bit of a listen, and they are actually a really nice, old style synth. I actually was quite surprised and by how much I actually liked the sound. I was actually sitting there going, it's probably interesting enough that I would actually consider it. Yeah. And I was actually quite, can't Behringer come up with something that's actually a little bit unique and new? And I know that that's their whole shtick at the moment, but really, yeah, I was actually kind of surprised how much I actually liked it. I put money that it's the mono one. I don't think they'll be doing the poly one.
Yeah. Yep. Do you guys want to hear an RSF Kobol? Have a little listen.
Oh yes, please.
All right, let's do this. Hopefully we can hear it. Well, you guys see what I mean now about that square wave bottom end. I mean, he's just, even in a crappy sounding YouTube video, you could even hear it in that. And those square wave oscillators with a bit of the phasing happening on it, just really, I honestly think that's a very unique sounding synth. And I'm really, really glad somebody is remaking. I don't really care who. I don't have anything against any company that remakes this, because these guys are no longer in existence. So yeah. I think this one's a free hit for anyone to take it on. Lisa, what about you? Do you like the sound of that? That's not Lisa, that's Darren.
Asio had said it sounded woody, and I kind of agree with him. It's like very deep and broad, you know?
Yeah.
Do you know, it's hard
like a double bass
sound,
like like a double bass sound. Yeah.
Big, yeah. Yeah, and I also like, am I correct in they are full-size jacks at the side of it? Because I haven't looked too much into this synth. But on the original, has it got like full-size jacks at the end?
On the original?
Yeah, on the original they are, I think.
On the original it is. Yep, they are. They're still playing.
Yeah.
He's still playing. On the Behringer, let's just grab that one up while you've got your face there, Inky. So we have to go find the photo. I don't know if it is. Don't know. I can't really see it. Doesn't look like it, does it? There's a jack on the bottom right-hand corner there that looks possibly, it might be. I don't know. Who knows?
On the original, isn't that? Oh, there could be. On the original, what a great idea. I'd have to look into that. I'm interested in that.
If you can get hold of one, you'd be very, very lucky.
Yeah. Yes. Someone says
and it'll cost you
20 years and they can't find them. Yeah.
Yeah, it will cost you serious money, one of those.
Yep. They are like rare as hen's teeth, as they say in the classics. Right, moving right along, there's more news. Now, you guys didn't see this stuff in your show notes, so I do apologise, but these things do come out as I get information that comes across my desk. And where should we go first? I think we'll go with this one first, and that is this. This is not really new news. It just kind of slipped under the radar over the Christmas break that Akai are now producing an MPC Live 2 in a retro sort of colour scheme. I don't know, what do you guys think about this grey retro colour scheme? I kind of like it. I kind of think it's pretty cool. I'm kind of getting a bit sick of the black. Because it shows all the dust in my studio anyway. But anyone got an opinion about this? Because I've got some more to show.
If they were white, I know the white's grey, but I don't like grey.
That's a very sort of mid-tone grey, isn't it, that one?
Is it the original MPC colour? That sort of creamy colour.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell on videos and on the screen, because the original MPCs were a slightly creamy colour.
I thought they were as well.
Inky, you know about this. You know the Tube Digger videos on his MPC. It's like half and half. Was that a special one, or has he had it? Has he had it pimped?
MPC stuff. I think he's got his done. I think he's had his modded.
Right.
He's got. I think they've sent Tube Digger every single MPC they've got. So you'll probably see a different one in each video. But
well, do you want to have a look at some more?
Right.
These are coming from Akai, right? So that's the first one.
Yeah.
There's also the gold edition.
Gold one, yeah.
You can get, and all of them are available in gold. So you can also get the MPC.
How hip hop bling is that?
Yeah.
Oh my god! I mean, I respect
You can wear it
it
around your neck.
and hate it. Yeah.
I don't know about that one. The one doesn't look too bad. That doesn't look too bad. I don't know.
Oh, will the gold come off them on your fingers?
All right, let's move on. We've got more news now.
If you lick it.
That's not really big news anyway. So the news that did come out today is Behringer have announced the BCR32, which is the BCR 2000 remake. Now, what they've said in the Facebook post today is that they've gone and had a chat to the guy that made Zaquencer, and he's now said, yeah, let's put the Zaquencer in the loaded into it. The other cool thing about it too is the back end of this thing. It's got the CD outputs on the right hand side there, which I don't think the original did. So yeah, I've got an original in the cupboard here. I can't be bothered pulling it out, but this definitely does look a lot nicer than the original one. The original one looked a bit horrible, but the original ones were built so tough. They had really like a really strong metal chassis. About the flimsiest thing on them were the plastic knobs on them. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to get a quick reaction. What do you guys think about that announcement? I don't know how long it's going to take them to make it.
So will that work standalone?
Yeah,
will that work as a standalone CB?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's the dollars on that one?
Okay, so they haven't said. They've said it's possible that it will be $150.
Oh wow!
Which is really good.
So how did that sequence work originally then?
Originally, it was just a MIDI controller that you could actually just go in and assign sysx or MIDI CC things to each of the knobs, and then Zaquencer came out and rewrote the whole firmware and made it into a sequencer. So they weren't dedicated buttons and things like that on it because it was a MIDI controller. So this kind of being now, it will have dedicated sort of buttons on there that I can see as well. Plus, it's got a nice little screen on there as well.
16 steps. Yeah, you can see number 1 to 16.
Has Darren got the original?
The guy that you guys would probably know that comes onto the channel every now and then is Dazza from Down Under. He's got the Zaquencer. I've also got it as well, but I don't use it. So I don't use it though because I don't need it. But yeah, we'll keep moving. There's more news. There's only one more bit, so sorry about this. I thought this was really cool, and I really needed to get this into the show today because I think we should have a quick chat about this. These are modifications now coming out on the TD3 from Behringer. So this is actually really cool. What this has got, I'll just read it. It's got the following hardware mods or hacks. Waveform blend. So you can see the waveform blend up. It's like a little black knob on the top sort of left area. Pulse width adjustment. Multi-mode filter overdrive, which is smack bang right in the middle of the Behringer logo. Then you've got an envelope to pitch knob down the bottom across that sort of angled bit across the face of it. Then moving from left to right, you have got the accent to pitch knob, accent off envelope, sub oscillator adjustment, and turning it on and off so you can get into a sub oscillator now. Higher resonance, a Barker mod, which I actually don't know anything about, and I've been meaning to get into that Facebook post and actually ask him about what that is. So anyone in chat who's been lurking around the Facebook group will be able to sort of sing out and tell us what that is. VCA adjustment, FFM, I'm guessing is filter FM, if anything. I don't really know what else it could be. Filter note tracking, rubber, I don't know what rubber is. Probably something to do with a rubbery sounding filter. VCA decay adjustment knob, envelope speed, there's 3 speeds. You can see that envelope speed is a 3-position switch. Bypass envelope, accent decay, and it's got an invert envelope on the far bottom right. What do you got? I'll just quickly show you here the Facebook post. Andrew Mayer was the guy that did this mod, so big shout out to you, and thanks for letting us have a little sort of mention to you. He is going to do a video. I don't think he's done one yet, but if I do get hold of that video in the next week, I'll show you guys next week. But anyone got, I mean, who's got one of these things now? I've got one, Andy's got one. Lisa, have you got a TD3 yet? I think you've got a TD3, haven't you?
It's not mine though, so I can't mod it.
Okay, so most of us have got one. Is anyone interested in those mods? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, they're cheap enough to actually mod.
Andrew,
now. I mean, you know.
Sorry, I want to say, Andy, you're muted if you're talking and you're thinking that we can hear you. You're muted.
Oh, sorry.
And we'll just go
I was going to say, yeah.
We'll just go to Andrew first because he was before you. Just one sec. Yep.
I was just going to say, you know, if you're doing an original TB303 mod, it's a bit scary because they're like super expensive. But at least if the TD3s are like $200 or $250 secondhand or on a special, it's cheap enough to mod that if you got it wrong, it's not a big drama. So it's actually really cool that this kind of stuff's coming out. And in fact, it'd be really, the one good thing about all this sort of Behringer and doing all the sort of analog stuff is it is a much easier to mod. So I'd love to see more of their gear being modded by people to actually, you know, really enhance it. So I think this is a good sort of thing that's happening. And it is actually one of the few things that actually makes me interested in a TD3 to kind of see how, you know, the sounds can be a lot different. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Andy, you were saying?
Well, ditto, basically. I mean, I might actually, you know, if that's available and it's not a stupid price to have it modded, then I quite cheaply perhaps even get hold of another one because, like Andrew said, they're not expensive; they're pretty cheap. So, and yeah, I mean, the one I've got here. I mean, maybe I could say, well, it only cost me £80. If somebody wants to drill holes in it, why not? And it's certainly, from what that looks like, it would certainly give a wider tone palette to something which has got a fairly limited but familiar tone palette. So a good idea. Well done to the chap.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, that's the end of the news. That was a lot, wasn't there? See? Told you there was news this week. Last week there was hardly any. This week there was heaps. Okay, and we do have one more segment that we like to do every week. There's not a lot in this, so we'll get through this one pretty quick. And that is our Price Watch segment. And for some reason that's paused. I don't know why. There we go. That was weird. Waiting for it to finish. There we go. Yay! Extra long Price Watch segment. Okay, first cab off the rank is, these both came from the fantastic people in the UK that, I think this one was Robbie Puricelli's post. So you can get a super rare, not for sale, with great bonus Yamaha. I don't know what that means, super rare, not for sale. But anyway, with great bonus Yamaha DX7FD DX7D nameplate. So basically what you're getting is that nameplate for 529 pounds. Yeah, you could wear that with your all your favourite lanyards. That one, yeah, winning. Fantastic.
How did you come up with that price? What sort of 50? You think 50?
You're down at the pub, right?
500.
He's done the pub test, hasn't he? But he's done the pub test at 2 a.m. when it's about to close. That's when he's done the pub test. Dearie me.
Yeah, but you've seen how nutty people can get about DX stuff, so I'm not that surprised.
All right, we'll do one more, and then we can finish off this segment. And that is this one, which also came from I think this Jamie from Geosynths put this one in. Roland SH09, perfect working order. I don't know what perfect working order means there. Yeah, I mean the price isn't too bad. That price, I could probably get a couple of keys from Roland and actually repair it, and I'd probably still be okay with that price. So we're not really too worried about the price here, but perfect working order I think is the thing that kind of got most people a bit pissed off with that one.
Well, it probably works if you use only both ends, either end of the keyboard.
Yeah, either that or just make sure you just get stab wounds in your fingers every time you play those keys.
It makes it exciting, dodge the slip finger, isn't it?
It's like, Jimmy, you've been playing the keyboard again.
Putting blood, sweat, and tears into you. Yeah.
Dearie me. All right, we are finished.
You play with drumsticks.
Yes. Okay, now we're into the fantastic part of the show where we actually get to talk about our topic, and that is the master clock, which was probably why some people have joined us, and hopefully haven't held your breath and haven't gone purple and you're still here. So what we're going to do first is I think the best way to do this is probably maybe go through a couple of little sort of things that people who don't really know much about this stuff should know. And then once we get out on the other side, a lot of the stuff that we'll be talking about will make a lot more sense. And for the people that do know a lot about this stuff, just understand that there's different people in different stages of their music career. So so hopefully we can get through. Now what I'm planning on doing without going to 3 in the morning for Andrew here is DAW MIDI clock timing issues, hardware MIDI clock timing issues, what a good stable clock offerings are available, Eurorack and CV clocks and issues to MIDI to CV, and then we're going to talk about lag, latency, jitter and all that sort of stuff as well. So hopefully with all that we should be able to come up with what is a good master clock. And yeah, so there's a lot to sort of get through. So what I thought we'd do starting off with is talk a little bit about kind of where it all started, and that was kind of syncing stuff. And back in the early days you had analog gear, right? So you had different types of stuff that you needed to sync. So Roland came up with a standard called the DIN sync, which was a pulse 0 to +5 volts that included a start, stop and reset and fill-in feature, and they were all on different pins. And we'll actually talk about DIN sync again a little bit later, but there's a famous TR-808 with the DIN sync plug on the bottom right hand corner there. So if you've never seen one, now you have. And moving along, we had V-Trig, which is basically it's a 2 to 10 volt on signal and an off signal of 0 volts, obviously. And ARP Odyssey, you can see the trig in on the bottom right hand corner there. And there's another ARP Odyssey, you can see it there as well. Different versions, the Mark II, I think that one is. And Oberheim and sequential. So we got sequential with the Pro 1. There you go, Andy. There's the trig in.
Yeah, there's a clock in as well.
Yeah, sorry, clock in. And this one is the Oberheim. I don't know if that's the right one I showed there, but I do think that one's got the V trig, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, someone will correct me if I'm wrong. What's next? Next is S-Trig. So S-Trig is basically the inverted version of V-Trig.
Moog.
Yeah, Moog did this. So there's the Moog source with S-Trig. You can actually see it says S-Trig on there. And also the famous modular stuff. Look at that, the 911. See, like, look at those S-Trig cable connectors that they had on it. They were very, interesting looking sort of plugs, weren't they? Very interesting indeed. So that's kind of like the hardware sort of analog stuff that they had in the old days. But what else we had is we had these kind of problems with all these machines at different time bases. They all had different syncs. They all had different time bases. You can just see here, you've got like the, you've got some modern gear in here too, but you've got the Oberheim DMX at 96 parts per quarter note, and a lot of them had 24, like the Roland stuff. We'll talk about why it's 24 a bit later. Then you've got the Korg Volca, which, it's a more modern thing, which is 2 parts per quarter note, which is interesting. And you might think to yourself, well, why does say I've got a Korg Volca Beats and I've got a Boutique Roland SH01A, and when I'm using the sync cables on these, why is one playing really, really fast and the other one playing normal? Or the opposite way, why is one playing really, really slow and the other one playing normal? And it will be because of those parts per quarter note. So that is a good little graphic just to remind us where we came from, and we still are in some degree. And here's a good graphic here too, where it does show synthesizers, a couple of examples here where we've got CV scale, gates. So you've got columns with CV scale, whether it's octave per volt or hertz per volt. We usually say volt per octave, by the way, just sometimes they put it around the wrong way. Gate voltage, so you've got different voltages in the gates, which can be a problem. Gate types, you've got the V-Trig and S-Trig, which I've already mentioned now, so you don't need to ask me what that means. And then you've got compatible MIDI to CV converters as a little matrix on the right-hand side. You've got some DIN, MIDI, and USB stuff. So that's pretty cool. That one, you'll always be able to come back to that on a replay if you ever want to see that one again. So there we go with that. Now, hardware and software. What else we do? Okay, we've got, sorry, before we get into hardware and software, the other thing is the CV gate stuff. So just so we're kind of clear here, a CV gate is not necessarily the same as a trigger. The difference between the two is that a trigger is usually just a short thing and a gate will be a longer pulse. I believe that's kind of the main difference. Now, me being a noob in Eurorack, someone will probably correct me, but there's kind of the difference. Now, you can use the both, but in some situations with CV clocks, you may want to sort of look at triggers instead of gates or gates instead of triggers, depending on your situation. And the other thing that control voltage needs is it also needs a run and a reset sometimes. For example, the IntelliJoy Metropolis, which I just recently got, has inputs for reset. And I've got other things that's got, like the Pamela's new workout, which has got inputs for run. So is that correct? Yeah, run. So sometimes you've got different sort of control voltages that you need for that. Now, I will talk about what they mean in a sec, because it'll come clear when we start talking about MIDI, which is very, very soon. But what I thought I'd also talk about is the ability to clock divide and multiply. So we talked about those parts per quarter note, and then you've got the main standard, which is 24, and that might be a time division. You might want to have 16 notes per bar or something like that. So depending on how your sequencer runs, you might want to clock divide it so that it slows the sequencer down, or you might want to clock multiply it so it speeds it up. So that's some of the cool things that you can do in both MIDI and in CV world. And I just thought, while we're talking about it, another good example of all this stuff is the key step and the beat step as well. And I don't know if you could see in that graphic where I've got the drop down of the sync showing there, where you can see one step gate, and you've got one step clock and one step Korg, sorry, one pulse Korg, I should say. And then you've got the 24 PPQ and the 48 PPQ. So you've got some options in your key step to sync. This is for the sync in and out ports on it. And that will depend on the type of hardware you're syncing to. So you can see, remember how I talked about before with triggers and gates in CV? So the clock would be the same as a trigger in that sense. So there's sometimes terminology that people talk about that kind of goes over the two. All right, moving right along, because there's still a little bit to get through, and we need to get through the next. So the next part is when you're talking about hardware or software, the types of syncs that you've got in clocks are hardware and software. Will use the terminology master and slave, which is also the same as internal and external. So some synthesizers use internal and external, some synthesizers use master and slave, some synthesizers use the actual name of what you're actually slaving or connecting to as well. So they all mean the same thing. This is one of the things that kind of does my head in about the music industry. There's all these people who've got different terms. Like we talked briefly a few seconds ago about PPQ. Some people call it ticks per quarter note instead of parts per quarter note. So there's all these kind of, don't get confused, it's all the same stuff. So, all right, we're going to talk about sync types. And I think this is really, really important, because most people would think, okay, what sync types there are? We talked about analog syncs, so there's more. There's this one, which a lot of people may not have heard of, which is the Society of Motion Pictures and Television Engineers. So you use this one for digital video. And yes, it's a clock, and it's still used to this very day. And what's actually also similar to this is the MTC, or the MIDI time code. And you've probably seen that in your synths and sequences. You've probably seen MTC. So they run very similar. And what these types of syncs are actually known as is real-time syncs or frame-based syncs. So they base their syncs on a frame rate, like 30 frames per second, 50 frames per second. So in the video world, that means a lot of sense to people. but not so much in the audio world. So in the audio world and the music world, we talk about things like music time sync, which is beats and measures, basically. So that's what we understand. So then you've got things like MIDI clock, which we all know about, which has got tempo, start, stop, and there's a few other bits and pieces in there. And there's also SPP, which is part of the MIDI protocol, which is the song position pointer. So the reason why I'm getting through all this is because we might mention some of this stuff, and we've now mentioned it as what it actually means, so you can kind of get through it. All right, let me just bring this up, this graphic. I thought this was really interesting. So here is a bit of software. I can't remember what it's from. Someone might recognize it. But look at the interesting clock sources that you can choose on this. You can choose internal, MIDI sync. So we talked about MIDI sync already. The SMPTE, which we showed the graphic of before, or MIDI time clock. Now, a lot of them will say this. Now, just so you guys know, all that's basically saying is I'm going to be choosing a frame rate or real-time clock. They're actually not the same, but if you have got the same frame rate, it should work nicely. And audio is a sync as well, which is interesting. Notice also the next bit down, the ticks per quarter note. So I didn't say parts per quarter note in this, so you've got the difference in terminology. And notice also the first option isn't 24, it starts at 48. And someone selected 960, that's a big one. One of the things to sort of remember about this is, are these divisible by 3 or 4, these numbers? So if you can find a number that's divisible by 3 or 4 in the music world, they kind of work well because you've got your triplets and your quarter notes. So that's important to know. And then down the bottom, Andrew and I couldn't really work out what some of these mean, but these are all frames per second. So I would say this has something to do with some video thing, would be kind of a guess for me. And there's also tabs for metronome and stuff like that.
It's the different film formats, and television. So different television broadcasters use different frames per second rates. See, the DF stands for drop frame. In that every so often one frame will be dropped out and so on. So I think 24 was US. I think 30 was a European standard, and it's all these different things for film and television and synchronizing the different things and SMPT, so sympathy code. You could set the different ones so that they would synchronize together. And these sympathy synchronizer devices were hugely expensive way back in the day. I had no idea it was still being used, but of course in the film industry, so it makes sense. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And right down the bottom, I think obviously the offset. Now, offset's important too because we may have to offset our clock because there might be a delay in the hardware to software talking and things like that. So another one we could quickly look at too is this is I wonder if anyone can recognise the screen. I'll give you a hint. It's a Roland. It is a Roland screen.
Is that an MV800?
It might be, but okay. So I think it actually is. I thought it was something else actually, but anyway, I think actually you might be right. I think it might be that. But anyway, what's interesting on this screen to look at is the whole sort of clock side of it, and you can see it's got absolute time up the top. You've got your tracks, your monitoring, your mastering. Then down you've got your sync and your tempo, and you've got your sync source. They've used the internal and external terminology here. You've got sync error level, MTC type. So this is your MIDI time code type, and it says 30. So what is it? We've just done a tiny little lesson on this, guys. What would that 30 stand for? 30 frames per second, right? Surely, because it's a real-time clock. So that's what it would stand for. And you've got sync gen too. I don't even know what that is. And sync offset, which is in seconds or milliseconds even. So that's pretty cool, and you can get right into that, can't you? So there you go. That's kind of just a real sort of basic cover of understanding sync, because if you want to understand master clock, you've got to understand what you're syncing stuff to. What else did we talk about? We didn't talk about MMCs. So I'll go to 4 of us so you're not staring at my face all the time. MMCs are the MIDI machine control, and so things like multi-track recorders and sequencers use MMCs, remotely controlling the transport controls. MMC only triggers the transport controls and sends a locate point, but no timing information is transmitted. So you would use MMC with MTC. So that's why you see on, for example, your MPCs and things like that, you'll see an option where it says MMC/MTC, because you'd use the 2 protocols together. Another option would just be to use Midiclock, because it has the same stuff in it, but it's obviously different because one works on frame rate and the other one works on beats and measures. So now that we know all these different things out there, we kind of need to know this, don't we? Because we now kind of need to get into the world of MIDI and clocks and understanding how all of our gear is connected. And if we've got a mix of hardware and software, we kind of need to know how we're going to sync it and what's the best way to sync. And then it gives us valuable knowledge about what is going to be the best thing that we're going to use as our master clock. And we're going to get there pretty soon, because I'm going to show you some examples of that in a sec. Just quickly, we'll talk about connectivity options. We all know that we've got USB, MIDI, DIN, we've got CV, which we've talked about, we've got Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and we've also got Ethernet. And Ethernet, there's a whole bunch of stuff inside there. We've got terminology which we can name protocols inside that, but Ethernet is basically the other way we connect. We talked about ticks and parts, PPQ or PP. Sometimes you'll see it as PPQ, not just PPQN. I don't know why they do that. It's just people just not agreeing to the same terminology. It just pisses me off. MIDI clock itself, by its standard, is 24 PPQN. And the reason for that is, by standard, you can set it to something different if you want, but by standard it's that, or by default it's that, because that number is divisible by 3 or 4 evenly. So that way you've got triplets and quarter notes, and it all makes everything kind of nice mathematically. MIDI clock also sends start messages, continue messages, and stop messages, and it's all done through different hexadecimal codes that it sends out, and the song position pointer is another one that it sends out. The song position pointer is an NRPN or an RPN type channel message as well, because it has an LSB and an MSB part to it, which is pointing to the 1/16th note positions. Now, we should get into maybe a quick break from me, because Andrew's here. Do you want to just have a quick chat about the MIDI clock side of things, Andrew, and just kind of, without getting into, we won't get into latency or jitter yet because we're going to talk about that in a sec.
No. Probably,
so just as a standard.
Look, actually, I need to let you know something. The MIDI Manufacturers Association and ACME have actually changed the terms master and slave based on feedback from the community, and it's now, if I remember this correctly, a manager and a member.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's for obvious. There's been a sort of a huge shift within the IT industry to kind of change those terms. However, there's 37 years of legacy on that, so just be aware. But the one that probably everyone tends to use when you're, especially if you're setting up things in a sort of a doorless jamming situation, is the straight up MIDI clock, which is the 24 pulses per quarter. And part of that reason why it's 24 and not 48 or 96 is just so that there's actually enough bandwidth on the typical MIDI DIN cable. It's just if you try to put too much more on there, you start getting a lot of that the jitter that we'll talk about. But effectively, it's just sending effectively like a pulse, go pulse, 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 and it's just continuous. And then obviously you have your start messages, as you mentioned before, and your stop messages, and you can. It's actually start, continue, start, pause, and start, continue, and stop.
Start, continue, and stop. Yep.
I should know this because I do enough
on the spot.
But that's the one that 90% of your modern equipment all uses. So that's the one that when you plug something in and you want the arpeggiator to sync, that's the message that you want. You know, that's the one that when you've got your 16-step sequencer or your drum machine, the start message and the timing message is the one that's actually going to keep it all in sync. So having something that's kind of central and you know, you can actually manage and use is probably something that I would recommend for everyone. And you see these people who have these setups and they go, I can't figure out how to make sure all these things all sync up. If you can figure that bit out, then everything just plays really, really nicely. So that's the one that I would, you know, obviously that's the one that I would suggest people first focus on.
Yep.
And then start looking at other things like the SMTP or the MTC stuff and the MMC. If you're doing linear-based sequencing, but it's also it's not as supported. It is supported, but not as much, you know, it's not in the average equipment.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's in sequences, high-end sequences, not all sequences. And then,
so an NPC, you know, supports
and
it.
Obviously software. Yeah. I mean, you could hook up your MPC and then, you know, sync it to Cubase or whatever, and they're going to lock into the same, you know, linear time, which is
measure.
Actually what all
Yeah.
that's about.
So you
that's
can start,
probably
you can start and pause it at a measure and then continue from that point. That's the whole point of that.
Yeah. But I
Cool.
found that can be really hard to get right.
Oh yeah, and that's some of half the problem we've got. But I think that kind of keeps us away from like talking about what are we going to choose and as the master, you know, clock, which I call the topic of the show. It's not really just about that. So the next thing I think is latency, guys, isn't it? What's the difference between?
Can I just jump in on the MIDI, MIDI side of it, if I may?
Yeah.
I think unless you are planning to synchronize your MIDI gear to video gear, unless you have to synchronize it to film, MIDI clock works really, really well. So again, it's that bottom line of deciding what is going to be your controlling device, the machine which is going to send out the main clock. Again, trying to avoid the old terminology. So in here, for example, the MPC, that's the main clock, and everything else that's going to respond to MIDI clock, that has to be set to external. Okay, so the elect drive is set to external, the other things are set to external so that they receive the clock and they respond to it. Even the supernova, the arpeggiator on the supernova. Yep. And once you've decided what's your clock source, everything else has to I'm sorry, I'm going to say has to slave to it, has to be subservient to it, if you like. I like the idea of master and servant, by the way, in the chat. That was a good one. Yeah. But once you've done that, it actually, as Andrew said, it works.
Yeah. So we were going to get to that in a sec. We were going to talk about how to.
Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun again.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But I just wanted to briefly sort of mention the difference between latency, and this is really for beginners who don't really understand what latency is and jitter. So they're actually two different things. So firstly, latency is let's say it's a consistent delay in time in your system. So it might be a MIDI delay or it might be an audio delay. But whatever that case is, it's consistently delayed. And in that sense, that delay can actually be compensated for. So you can actually you can have a delay threshold that you can do in DAWs and hardware devices. So there is no real actual perfect real-time transfer of digital audio in and out of a digital interface. So latency will exist no matter how good your digital audio interface is. It's just very, very low latency. But just, you know, let's not pick on digital too much, because latency also exists in mechanical acoustic instruments, like the time it takes for you to press the key on the piano for the hammer to hit the string. There's latency. So there's problems with latency in music everywhere. And I think the distinction that we should understand about latency is it can be corrected because it's a consistent thing. We should be able to measure that latency, and it's a consistent thing. If you don't have if you have inconsistent latency, then that probably may be some sort of other thing that you've got. So jitter is the other one. So what is it? Jitter is the one that confuses a lot of people, I think. So let me try not to be too technical, but I kind of do have to be a little bit. When we're talking about MIDI, MIDI sends digital events down the cable, right? And jitter is basically where those MIDI events aren't processed at the correct time. They are either early or they're late when they arrive at their destination, and therefore by that fact, those MIDI events are unpredictable. And that is what MIDI jitter is. Now, why does it happen? So basically it happens because MIDI protocol, at the moment, we're not talking about MIDI 2.0, we're talking about MIDI 1.0. It transports 3 bytes of MIDI events per second. Sending too many MIDI events in that can lead to overflow, and overflow messages, because it can't handle it, has to be put somewhere, so it stores it usually. Sometimes it just deletes, it just falls off the face of the earth, but usually it stores it in a buffer. The buffer is kind of like a little sort of memory holding bay. Once the buffer is able to retransmit those, guess what? They are not going to be timed, and therefore those non-timed events will eventually be transmitted and they'll be received at the other end, either late or early, depending on which situation you're in. So that is jitter. So how do we fix it? So this is kind of now where we can start talking about how we choose master clock and stuff like that, because we're going to need to understand what jitter is, and if you've got something that's causing jitter, we don't really want that to be your master clock, right? So these are kind of educated decisions. So we use dedicated hardware as a clock device. That could be an option to do. We can reduce MIDI message data, so we might have too complex MIDI information in your tracks or in your MIDI controller. And you could also look at things like hardware bottlenecks. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't do. Look at your PC or your Mac, look at your DAW software, look at the CPU usage, the memory usage, look at things like USB hubs and too many connections to it, poor connections, older technology. So any of those things could be the reason why you've got MIDI jitter. There's also a couple of others, but we won't go into it. And it's usually to do with people that don't know how to program properly. So deciding on what the master clock will be dependent on everything that we just mentioned before. So let's have a look at some master clocks. Yay, we're finally here, guys. We had to go through that. I'm really sorry, but that is really, really important, as you probably understand. So here's one, Roland SyncBox, the SBX-1. God, while I've got this up, if anyone has one and they want to sell it to me, please let me know. I'm dead serious. I actually want one, and I can't get one. They're not available anywhere that I can see, in my country anyway, and maybe in the world. So yeah, if anyone's got one of these lying around, they want to get rid of it, shout out to me later, and I'll organise a transfer of money. So why are these good? Because these have the DIN sync, which is what we mentioned before. So this is why I had to go through all this stuff, right? Because we're now mentioning terminology. So you know what DIN sync is now. It also has CV and gate, and it also has MIDI. It also has USB, and also it's a master clock. And it's actually a really, really stable master clock. A lot of people, DJs, are probably the biggest users of this device, but musicians as well, actually think this is actually a really, really cool value for money. I think when it first came out, these were about $199, and I don't think they're $199 anymore. But yeah, so the fact that it's got all that connectivity makes it really, really cool. In fact, I've got a picture of it being all connected up. So it's got some Eurorack connections, some MIDI DIN, and some DIN sync cables connected up with the USB as well. So that's a good one. What else we got? We have got, sing out if you want me to stop. This is by ERM. This is a multi-clock. ERM, these are very well known, the ERM hardware clocks. They are extremely well known for being one of the most stable clocks out there in the business. Now this one is good because it's a 4-channel. Now why is it 4-channel, and why do we need 4 channels? Because the 4 channels are independently sent the master clock information without going through some sort of MIDI through, buffer. This is literally just 4 independent channels straight from the guts of the clock. which makes this thing really powerful. It's got other things that it does as well, like for example, it's got DIN and analog and other features in there as well. But mainly, let's say this is going to be a really stable master clock for you. And just to show you the connections on the back, and we've got some connections on the back, and it's got its little brother as well, the MIDI clock. And I think a lot of people have got one of these. So you can actually choose between MIDI or DIN, and this has got a jitter. See, this is why we use these terms before, guys. This has got a jitter of a maximum of 500 nanoseconds. Now that is probably one of the most stable clocks I've seen out there. There's probably some others that beat it, but that is pretty insane. If you're going to get some sort of stable clock in your MIDI setup, these would probably be where you'd be looking. We also have this one as well. This is by a company called SND, or Sound. And this is the ACME 4, and it's quite similar to the Multiclock by ERM, and this offers, once again, independent 4 channels of clock. But what this does, which is kind of cool, this is very popular with some DJs, is this has clock shifting ability. You can see with the knobs there. So you can actually shift the clock backwards and forwards in timing. It has clock divisions, and you can do all that on the unit itself. There's the connections on the back. So that one I believe is actually USB powered as well, which is pretty cool. So what else we got? We've also got one from Doepfer, for those playing along at home, the MSY2 MIDI to sync converter. And some people swear by this, saying it's pretty good. It can run as a master clock. And there's plenty more. So for example, you can use a MIDI PAL, MIDI Bro, MIDI Gal as your master clock, as a MIDI master clock. And there's also Eurorack things. I'll get to that later as well. And what about this one? If you're into Pro Tools, this is probably like the higher end of clock mastery. So this is the Pro Tools Sync HD by AVID. And this has got not just MIDI, this has also got things like word clock, which is for your digital audio syncing, and it's got the parallel sync cabling, and this is kind of like studio sort of land sort of stuff. And I wonder if anyone in chat has actually got one of these, just out of curiosity. So I'm not showing you every single option of master clocks out there on the market, but I'm showing you a good sort of covering. And then it's another one which we probably may all have at home, and that is Ableton has this thing called Ableton Sync. Or Ableton Link. What am I saying? Ableton Sync. Ableton Link. And I will tell you that Ableton Link is actually a pretty good clock syncing or master clock ideology. And I think the concept is that with all of these devices that you see here, any of them can decide to be the master at any time, and any of them can disconnect without, so it's like plugging in and unplugging without it affecting any of the other devices in that sort of Ableton Link network, if you like. Ableton Link can be communicated over Wi-Fi and also Ethernet LANs as well, and also USB and other types of forms of connections as well. So Ableton Link is kind of a fairly new thing that's come out in the last few years, but it's actually a really, really cool thing. And I've used it with my MPC. You guys who've got MPCs will know there's Ableton Link in them, and it actually hasn't been in them from the start. They've only added that in the last 5 or 6 US firmware updates in them. So there we go. There's a bit of a sort of overview of what you can use as a master clock hardware-wise, and right at the end we stopped with a software version of it. Obviously, it's not the only thing. So any questions at this stage where we're up to? If you guys in chat have a question, make sure you highlight my name at Ranzi and then ask your question. So that way it highlights it for me so I can see your question. We will now, I think the best thing to do now maybe, Andrew, is we'll show you a cool thing that you've got prepared for us while we're waiting for questions.
Fair enough. Okay.
Okay.
So this, there we go. Is that coming through? I'm assuming that's coming through.
It is.
So, because this topic came up, I actually dug out a bit of code. So a lot of the master clocks, as you probably see them around the traps, are reasonably pricey. So you can actually build it yourself. So this is actually built out of about $15 worth of components. And just to kind of show you, this is what it does. I'll sort of move things up a little bit, sorry. So it's got a basic start, stop. It goes through your 4 bars. And you can see that's actually going through. You can see the pulsing on there. And you can stop it. But, you know, you can basically go up your BPM, down your BPM. So, and all of this is just sending out DIN MIDI. Nothing exciting. But the good thing about this particular thing is you probably can't see it here on the actual, the reason I've got the blue up underneath it is it's got a way of measuring the drift. And if that's just based on an Arduino, and you can actually get that down to almost 0.1 milliseconds drift. So the idea of clocks being expensive or difficult is actually what I'm trying to show here is that they're actually not. And you can actually have this then go off into a splitter and control all of your pieces of equipment if you don't have your own central master clock. The other thing that I found was that a lot of sequences, for example, hardware sequences and so forth, as soon as you press stop, they actually stop sending clock, which is actually a big problem, and they actually shouldn't do this.
They shouldn't
because, you know, if you've pressed stop, but you still want your arpeggiator to still be in time, or your delays that you might have set up, if you've set up some kind of delay sync,
yep,
then suddenly you hit stop, and they go back and use their internal clocks, which may be something completely different. So this is a way of having not just a centralized clock, but a centralized clock that continuously sends out data regardless. And this is just a very, very, as I said, just a very, very cheap way of doing it. Just, I don't know if you can see that underneath there. That's just got a Arduino underneath it. But again, really simple to make if you want to do something like that yourself.
Very good. And $15 you said with the parts to do this?
Yeah, $15 Australian. So that's if you go on eBay and buy. Yeah, there's 5 components in that. So 3 buttons, the DIN, 6 components. The DIN connector, hang on, I'll just point out bits. Yeah, so I've just got 3 little buttons here, tactile switches. This is just a module you can buy on eBay, and this is just a Arduino Pro Micro underneath it. And they're cheap as chips. If you just get on eBay, you can find them very, very cheaply. So I think, yeah, I mean, probably between about $15 and $20 worth of components.
Yeah. Now, is there a link to this project at all, or is this something that you've just concocted yourself?
Not yet, but only because I finished it. It's an old project I've had lying around, but I will put it up on GitHub, and I'll put up the link on the Discord or something, so if people are interested.
In the Discord chat, cool.
You know,
fantastic.
Yeah, people can.
Yeah, most of them are in the Discord now, so that's good. Fantastic. All right. Yeah. Well, I really, really like that. And, there's a very, very cheap solution to set up a very stable clock. Now, what did you say that the buffering on that was very, very low? Because the blue up shows that sort of clock drift, doesn't it?
So the blue up shows it shows the drift. On here, most of the time it says either 0.00 milliseconds or 0.01 milliseconds drift. That's very good. And that's the other thing too, is you've got to make sure that your master clock, and we'll obviously talk about this with Jitter, but I find that not all devices are equal, and you'll get a lot of devices that actually, as soon as they send out any large amounts of data, they actually start to wobble quite a lot.
Yeah. So let's actually talk about that, because I have got something set up here which is the MIDI Power, MIDI GAL, MIDI Bro, same thing. This is a MIDI Bro, but they're all the same. Same firmware. This is the MIDI clock monitor, and there's two readings on this. There's the actual tempo reading, and there's the drift in it as a percentage, and I can actually toggle between live percentage and sort of like a, an average. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit start on my MPC. You should be able to hear that annoying sound. And you can see here you've got the MIDI data coming in. Now you notice that the BPM is going up by 1/10. So it's 131.2, 131.1, 131.3. So there's your drift in your clock. Do you see that, guys? So these are the sort of things that you want to look at. What you would really like to see is that just sitting at 131.0 and not moving at all, if possible. But you can see it's actually going up 20–30% of a BPM. Well, there you go, right up to 5 there. So these are pretty accurate, these little algorithms, just so you know. They're pretty accurate, and that will also show you very similar sort of readouts. If you're showing a clock from Ableton, it'll show you, it'll drift. It'll show you the same issue. One of the problems that you have with this is that if you're running your MIDI clock into a delay, like for example, you say you've got the Boss DD500 delay pedal, that's going to sound like a rubber band because the jitter and the drift and all that sort of stuff in that will cause the delay to slightly misbehave, and it's not going to be the perfect sort of sounding delay. And that's where you really start to hear problems with clock. So you can actually also set this up as a master clock, just like with Andrew's project as well. And you can have at the back MIDI out. Actually does MIDI through as well. Right, so one of the things I thought we'd mention quickly is the solution that I'm using at the moment, and that is I'm using Pamela's new workout as a master clock. Now, Pamela's new workout is by ALM Busy Circuits. That's this module here, if you're wondering. And it's a really, like if you're not into your rack, this may not be helpful at all to you, in which case refer to the previous hardware items that I showed you before. But this basically offers a very similar sort of package to what those boxes that I showed you before. And they've got a very stable clock in them. They actually do document how stable the clock is. It is recommended that you use this module as the master clock. You can actually run it as a external, so you can put an external clock in here and also a run clock in as well. But you'll notice that it has all these outputs. So you've got 8 outputs, which is actually really handy. And so that's becoming like a matrix. So with each of these outputs, they can all be programmed to do a whole bunch of different things. But let's just say very easily, basically, you can set the outputs to be either, so let's look at, say, output 1. So you can see that I've got that as a 4 multiplier coming out. So that's actually 4 times faster than the actual clock itself that it's generating. And that is going into the IntelliGel Metropolis. And the next one, number 2, I've got as a divide. So it's a divider by 1.5. Sorry, was the first one divide? No, multiply, yeah. So the second one is a divider by 1.5. So it's 1.5 divisions of the master clock. And that's going into my Magneto as the clock into that. So these are all CV-based clocks, right? And I've got others going out to various things. And the cool thing about that is, so you heard the sequence running before. If I change the division, that's times 4. So that's the base level of division on the Metropolis. And then you've got options to divide it down to 4. Okay, so that's why I've done it so times 4, because I've got the ability to slow the sequencer down, which is really cool. The other thing that you can do with the Pamela's new workout is you can get expander modules. And this one is the little one, it's the PX2. And notice it's got a MIDI out on it. And the MIDI out is just your standard, you know, these type of jobbers where it's the TRS to DIN, or you can go straight into TRS to TRS and you just plug that in. Now there's a jumper on the back that you can change it from type A to type B. So that gives you all that programming ability. But what else it gives you? It also gives you a PPQN24. It's actually hard to see. There you go. PPQN24. And it also gives you a run. So for things that need run, because there are some CV things in Eurorack that need run, it's also handy. Another thing that I've done with it too, you'll notice here, is I've patched in my Pamela's new workout into the Doepfer clock divider. And this clock divider module gives me a whole bunch of options to clock divide as well. So that's basically slowing your clock down. So I'm using the Pamela's new workout usually to multiply the clock, and I'm using the Doepfer to divide the clock. So I've got all this kind of crazy stuff that I can do. Now, someone mentioned in the chat earlier that I wish MIDI clocks weren't stuck on a tempo. So this is what I like about the Pamela's new workout, is that you can have a master clock and then you can set some of these outputs to do some crazy things that are literally randomized algorithms based on the master clock. So it might sort of arrive at that beat somewhere, but everything else is kind of going way out. So you can do some crazy stuff, and that's one of the things why these modules are so good. And like I said, also you can set different sort of waves and options in there. I don't want to go into it further than that because I think it gets a bit too complex. But okay, so the last thing is, how do I then sync that to my MIDI gear? Well, obviously you use the MIDI out. That's a way to do it. And another way to do it, which is what I'm currently doing right now, is I'm actually taking one of the syncs out and going into the sync in on my beats, on my key step. And it works beautifully. And then the key step is then the master clock for other things, because everyone thinks because the key step works in MIDI world, and then everything thinks it's the only thing that's the key step's got is a MIDI clock running. But actually what it's doing is it's actually set to sync in on the little dip switches at the back, and it's getting that clock information from the Pamela's new workout. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Now, that's not necessarily going to be the answer for you.
Can I just mention about, before you get off the Pamela's module?
Yeah.
They make Pamela's Disco, and it's the only thing you can get to get hardware Pioneer gear to talk to MIDI stuff. Yep. So it's quite useful, even if you're not into modular, because it's the only thing that can do it. She saw a problem, or they saw a problem, and they built it. Yeah. So yeah, that's just interesting because no one else has done that. Yeah. You use Ableton Link. So yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like I said, we can talk about Pamela's new workout all day because there's so much other stuff that it can do in there as well. Okay, so that's not going to necessarily solve. Disco though. No. That's called Pamela's Disco. Yeah, that's different, but it's all based on similar, lessons learned, if that makes sense. Obviously that it's older. Don't forget too, Pamela's new workout used to be called Pamela's Workout. So this is the second iteration of that as well. So if you've actually got an older Pamela's Workout module, they're still good. You just don't get some of the features with the new one. Can I show the key steps sync quickly? Yeah, well, okay. So if I press, if I go back to here, if I press start on this, are you guys hearing the music? Just quickly, if I do this. Yes. Yep. Yep. So the drum beat that you're hearing is coming out of my MPC. So the sequence is coming out of the CV IntelliGel Metropolis, and the drum beat's coming out of the MPC. And that is through the inside of this. Let me just see if I can. Yep. Just get this up.
So there's the sync in. I don't know if it'll focus or not. Focus. There you go. There's the sync in and the key step. See that? And the dip, you saw the dip switches. Sorry, I should show the dip switches. See how the dip switches are set to sync in down the bottom, well, the top option, but it's the bottom option when you have it up right. All right, so that's that. Sorry, I haven't got a better camera angle because it's not, I haven't got like 50,000 cameras set up at the moment. And then the MPC is connected to a MIDI hub, a USB hub, and everything else is synced to the MPC and to the key step. So that's why the drum beat is nicely in time. So yeah. Yeah, we did have some questions. So, and I've been seeing them pop up. So let's see if we can go back. X101's asked us a few, so let's see if we can find his original one. I think it was Ramsey. What about using audio out to sync boxes to compensate for your DAW's audio latency when working with MIDI? So that's like we were saying before with DAWs and latency. Because latency is constant, you can actually then go into your DAW and actually correct the MIDI latency, so that then when you're hearing your audio go back through it, it should all be nicely timed. So that's something that you can do. We can show that. And then he asked as well, can you show the key step? I did that. And he said, might save me buying the expansion. Yeah, you might not need it, but just bear in mind one thing, and that is the key step is not 100% stable as a clock, I don't find. Yeah, Beat Step, Key Step, Beat Step Pro, I've never really found their clocks to be that stable. So just because it's taking an external clock in, but it's transmitting it out, it's still got the same clock problems going out. So I still don't find them to be that stable. What I forgot to tell you guys is I just ordered the PX2 expander module from ALM, but unfortunately it came in on Friday, which is yesterday, and unfortunately it's actually not working. So I would actually have that MIDI out connected. So I'm sending it back to them and getting replacements. No issues. It's like, you know, these things happen, you know. But I would be using that MIDI out, and that would be my master MIDI out going into whatever, you know, hub, you know, that sort of stuff. So I kind of plan going that way. Let me tell you that there's so many people out there that will say the same thing, that clock is extremely stable. That's not the only option. One of the things you could do, like we have all been doing, I've been doing on this show prior to me getting into Eurorack, is I've been using Ableton Link with my MPC. So I might set up Ableton here, and let me just go across to Ableton. Let's get rid of all that crap. And you can just actually enable Ableton Link there. And now that's running. So this is Ableton 10, is it? I forget which one it is. Yep, this is 10. So once you set up Ableton Link, then you can go into your hardware device like MPC and actually enable Ableton Link in that. And that as long as it's connected via Ethernet or Wi-Fi, that will now connect to Ableton via that. Now I will say, I have found Ableton Link to be extremely stable. So I don't think many people can be too disappointed with the clock on this. So if you want to run Ableton as your master, you could, or if you want to run your MPC as the master, you could do either way. You could do it either way. Yeah. I
use Ableton Link with Serato. So Serato becomes the so Ableton Link is running Serato in time, and that's running records. Yeah. So not just MIDI information. So, and it's always been really tight. So that's quite a good way of showing how tight it is, because it's running waveforms rather than MIDI messaging. Yeah. If you know what I'm saying.
You do. Yeah. Yep. And Lisa, while we've got you there too, the fact that you're running Ableton Link means that you can have your Ableton set as your master clock, or you could have Serato set as your master clock. It doesn't matter. You could have either.
No, you have to have Ableton Link as your master clock. The reason being, yeah, I don't think it works the other way around.
No, it does. Yeah.
But
yeah,
that's fine because the whole studio is set up so the only reason I use Ableton is for the clock, because it can then send out to MPCs or Akai Force, which is basically the same clock, because it has the same brain, and that can control other equipment and still have the records. And so the computer isn't doing that much work. It's just really running Serato.
Yeah.
And everything else, the work is being done in the hardware.
Yeah. So just so you know, all you've got to do if you want to run Ableton with an external clock is just click on the little EXT next to it. So it's just right next to the link button, there's an EXT, and that will set your external sync on. So you can sync, and in your MIDI config, you can set up in these things, you can set up in here what you want as, where's MIDI?
I tend to leave Ableton as the master because it's doing the least work. So Serato's trying to analyze waveforms, play waveforms, and do various stuff that I'm doing with a controller, whereas Ableton is just sending that clock, and eventually there should be two machines. So, but yeah, it's useful to know. It's a useful device.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is.
Without that, I'd have to buy Pamela's Disco to make my setup work, because there's no way I could get the record decks in time. There's no other way of doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So while we're talking about sync, Max mentioned sample accurate, which I haven't had a lot to do with, but I do believe it's where you've got two samples and they kind of find the tempo between them somehow. I don't really understand it, but maybe he can explain that better in the chat. It's not really something that I'm that familiar with, but yeah. I haven't mentioned it only probably because I just don't know about it. Don't expect me to know everything. I'm not like, you know, the master of the master clock. I'm just sort of showing my experience with the master clock.
Well, we do, Rounds. We expect you to know everything. You are the fountain of all knowledge.
I'm drinking beer now, so I'm allowed to say whatever I want. Now, I think we've talked about Ableton Sync. We've talked about Blue. Oh, we didn't talk about Blue Arp. Okay, cool. So Andrew did show Blue Arp briefly. I don't know if I can show my Blue Arp. Yeah, maybe we'll use Andy's. Let's just get his up. Now on the Blue Arp, on the whoa, cameras. Fantastic.
It's a bit, you know. Oh,
hey, I thought I've had a few beers
too. I think. There we go. That's better. Sorry about that.
On this, you can see it's not that clear, but on the right-hand side in that top screen, there's like a little sort of measurement thing, and in the middle is 0, and to the left is minus, and to the right is plus. And what that actually shows you is the clock drift. This is actually pretty cool. It's something that Oleg's developed, and I don't know if I've seen anything exactly like this before. It's definitely a cool thing. Now, I don't know, Andy, if you can actually press play on your Arduino and it will actually show the clock or not.
Nope, because I've killed it. Hang on.
Just restart it, yeah.
2 seconds. Yeah,
that's right.
I need to restart it. I broke it when I knocked
When
it.
the camera flip-flopped. When the camera got drunk.
Okay. There we go. So, I've started it, and as I go up,
You go to like a really big BPM. There you go. You can see it there. It's drifting a bit there.
yeah, it'll come down in a second. gets really weird sometimes when you...
Yeah.
It'll drop down to nothing in a second.
Yeah, I just want to see.
Sometimes it does this really strange drift thing, but anyway. Stop. There we go. Right, now I'll do... So, I'll get it up to... Let's see if I can hit 300 BPM.
Yeah, so you can see that little marker move from the 0 and it went over to the right. There's a little marker just there. That's actually really cool. I love that. That's one of the cool features about the Blue Up. Let me see if I can do it on mine, Andy. I just want to see mine. Mine unfortunately has the video interlacing flicker death that it wants to make. Sorry, I got to press start. See that little marker there? See how it's flopping around? And it's having trouble focusing. Sorry, camera. But there you go. You can see it's just flip-flopping around. And that's actually pretty cool, just having that. Stop. That's really cool having that. Anyway, let me go back to us. It's just like a nice little hardware visual thing. I reckon it'd be really nice if we had a little bit more like that sort of stuff in DAWs. I know you can get plugins that will do things like that, but just they should be built in. In Ableton, you do have the ability to go in and adjust latency. We talked about latency. I forget there's a special view that you've got to enable, don't you, to see it. Track delay, I think it's called. There we go. Let's do that. So you've got track delay in Ableton. I don't have any other DAWs at the moment except for Studio One, and I don't really know that well. So there's your track delay there. So you can set up an actual, whether it be in milliseconds or SMP. There's your two options there, and which was what Mac was talking about, the sample thing. And then the other thing too is somewhere in here you can actually set up the MIDI stuff. Where is it? Here. So say, for example, my Arturia key step had a sync delay. I can actually set that in milliseconds here. Notice that it's got the sync type. We talked about MTC and Midiclock. So obviously Midiclock's the best one. But if you are setting MTC, you can actually set the frame rate here. So that's why we talked about all that stuff before, so that you guys can understand what it means. And you can also set MTC offset as well. So this if you've got like maybe a hardware sequencer that you're using as an input clock. But that's actually cool how you can actually set the MIDI sync delay there on there. And also, don't forget, if you're in Ableton and you're wondering why your clock isn't syncing to your hardware, you may not have that actually turned on. That's another thing that a lot of people forget. Turn your sync light on, and that's just in your preferences under MIDI. So there you go. All right, let's go to the chatties. Questions. This was a pretty heavy sort of topic, but I think we've got through most of it. Let's go back. Ramsey Wright, knowledgeable zenith of experience and entertainment. Yeah, nice try. Hello to Richard Grooks, who's said good day to everyone. Good morning to you. It's good evening from us. Roy Stribble said he's just dropped in and he had the best of experience with the stable clock with the Circlon. Yep, they do have stable clocks. And a piece out of my... and availability and price out of his reach. And Pamela's you work out which I use now. So there's you go. There's someone who's using it right now. Well done. What else have we got? Can you adjust the shutter speed of your camera? Yeah, I can, but I just for right now, if I did that, it would disconnect the feed, and I don't want to go through that crap. But I could. What I found really helpful before I got Pamela's were clock management engines like the SND. Yeah, so we talked about, Roy, we did talk about the SND ACME 4, which were better than the ERM. Yes, that's what I've heard as well. Now, the SND ACME 4 is pretty pricey. I think it's around about five or six. No, it might be 800 or something US. Actually, didn't write the price down. Someone can probably correct me if I'm wrong there. Yeah, he says it's expensive. But then again, if you don't have any Eurorack and it's all MIDI based stuff, and you want to start playing around with swing and clock divisions and stuff like that, that can do it on the fly, and you can actually get some really, really cool artistic sort of things on it. There's a DJ called Daypack who uses it in one of his videos, so I should show it. So MIDI timing drifts. Mac's saying MIDI timing drifts, whereas sample accurate timing doesn't. Yeah, that's the problem with MIDI. But yeah, there's probably pros and cons with all sorts of types of sync anyway. So X101's asking me, the ERM Multiclock uses a VST to send audio clock out of your interface into the multi-clock. So if you're using a bunch of VSTs that adjust the clock for you, there you go. Didn't know that. I mean, I don't own one, so that's actually cool to know. Does anyone have experience with the inner clock system stuff? Anyone? Native VS is asking. See you later, Mr. Dazza. JX3D's jumped in. Now, JX3D's just pulled his studio apart, so he's probably barely just got his computer running, so big hello there. He chucked a photo up in the Discord chat, so if you're wondering. There you go. Fantastic. Anyone else? Did I miss out on any other questions? I don't think I did I? No, I didn't. All right, so I think the big question now is, does everyone feel like they're kind of a little bit more sort of educated and a little bit more in control about what they're going to choose? I mean, Lisa, you've already got it sorted, so you're fine. You're using Ableton Link. Andy's got it sorted. He's using his MPC1.
Well, Andy's got it sorted from the MIDI side of things. A long time ago, when I had a Kenton Pro 2 MIDI to CV converter, occasionally during Chillage People gigs, we'd actually have sequences set up on the Pro 1s and the SH101, and would take a clock, a MIDI input into the Kenton, which would then convert to clock and send the clocks out to the Pro 1s and the SH101 as it was. And it always used to amaze me. I used to think this was like some kind of black magic, that it actually worked without any titting about. It just worked, and that always just amazed me. So when I've got my new sequencer in the rack and the various modules, that will be the point where I have to go, now somehow I've got to convert the MIDI to analog clock. Now how am I going to do that? What am I going to use to do that? Because one question I was going to ask you, Randy, because I thought you might know, and I think you sort of did mention it, but the MPC has got, the MPC1 has got CV out, but they don't carry clock.
No, they're just CV and gate. So you could.
What am I? So am I going to have to use my beat step?
No, you
as a clock converter.
So you could set up a sequence which sends a gate based on, like, say, a quarter note beat. So you're actually creating. Yeah. You're creating an actual beat, and then that gate would actually pulse.
So that was actually just becomes a clock. That seems like a bit of a faff. I just wish you could set one of them to be an analog clock, which would be more convenient. Because what I was wondering was if, like you mentioned, the key step as like a converter, as a MIDI to sync or to clock converter. Now I've got a BeatStep Pro sitting in front of me here, so that could, in theory, do the same thing. But so that's where my issues with clock are going to come. In here with MIDI, not a problem. But as soon as I have to go into analog clock, that's going to be a little bit more of a headache. I don't think it's going to be an insurmountable problem. When there's a problem, there's a solution, of course.
Yeah, of course. Now, Native VS is mentioned in the chat room. Rands, have I heard of interclock systems? And apparently he reckons they're an Australian company. I've never heard of them. Yeah, that looks like they do hardware and software clocking type devices. Looks interesting. Yeah, you should check it out. So that's just interclocksystems.com. They've got a few products there. They've got the Gridlock, the Sync Gen, the Multi-Split. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. So DIN Sync, MIDI port, expanded. So, you know, for you, Andy, you were sort of talking about, you know, what you can do with your MPC. I mean, I think the easiest thing would be just if you're doing something and you want to get it into CV world, into Eurorack. Get a Pamela's, or just get an Expert Sleeper MIDI to CV module, or any MIDI to CV module would probably do you okay, and that should be fine. Yeah,
probably the solution.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know anything about interclock. Sorry, you go ahead, Andy.
I was just going to say I've watched a number of videos this week about Pamela's new workout. I know you'd got it, and this topic was coming up, and obviously it's coinciding with future needs, and it does seem like it's an almost essential little box. But again, it's about £200 for one of those, which is probably £200 well spent. But it's not an immediate purchase, but or maybe it will be. Oh, who knows? So certainly, it's a great little box.
Yeah. Yeah.
ALM does MIDI and also, yeah, it's true.
It does.
Says
yep.
X101.
So the other version of that module, the expander, I should get back to this camera angle again. So there's another expander module that you can get instead of this nice little slimline one. By the way, I got that slimline one because I only needed MIDI out and I actually didn't need the other version, but it's actually got a MIDI out and a DIN out. So DIN sync out. I think there's something else it's got on there as well. I think it's got a couple of gate things on there as well. And it's obviously a lot wider. I think it's the same width as the clock divider module. But yeah, enough of Pamela's new workout. They're not sending me any money. They should be sending me a new module, that's for sure. Okay, so yeah, Richard Grogg said something interesting in the chat, just a passing comment, and he said, what's the point of putting all that effort into getting everything in sync, phase accurate, and then, he didn't say in sync, he said getting everything phase accurate, and then adding slop parameters to synths? Well, I mean, you know, I was just thinking to myself, we could all be going down the rabbit hole of getting all of our clocks so perfectly synced that we're going to get to the point where we won't like them to be perfectly synced anymore. We will reminisce about the old days when we had MIDI jitter and latency, and yeah, we'll all complain about it again. And they'll actually be building jitter as an option into synths. Or they'll be forcing you to go to MIDI 1.0 mode or something.
Because it sounds warmer. But mind you, all those people who go nuts over Atari 1040 STs because they are so, accurate with their MIDI. People get very, very funny about MIDI having any jitter. So I don't know. I get the feeling people are going to would prefer a very tight clock more than anything else.
Mm. And I think jitter can be completely misinterpreted as well, because MIDI jitter might not be anything to do with clock. It might just be because you've just absolutely smashed too many MIDI CC messages down that little 3 bytes per second protocol.
Or you like black MIDI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what's black MIDI?
Black MIDI.
Haven't you heard of black MIDI? Black MIDI is a whole phenomenon, but effectively what it is it's trying to. I've only seen bits of it, but effectively it's these MIDI files which are really incredibly dense, full of lots and lots of notes, to kind of produce all kinds of sounds, and they call it Black MIDI. And it's actually it's about
You want
trying
me,
to just
Andrew? Sorry.
no go look
Trying
it
to
up.
mess the
It's great.
system up. Oh.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fair enough.
There's actually one there was one that was using I know this is off topic, but they were effectively using your standard GM sounds to produce voices by pumping in so many notes. Just crazy stuff like that.
I've seen people do that sort of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
D-Best's also said Black MIDI are a band too. Have I missed that one as well? Have I just been living in a box for the... Oh, that's the name of a band.
No, you've been living in Sheffield.
Yeah. Oh, you beat me to it, Ron.
Look, it's the fourth biggest city in England. It's not.
I lived there once
Kudorf.
for 3 weeks.
It's
3
a
or 4
box.
weeks. Then I left.
And you were happy to leave and escape to Cornwall. Yeah, that's
No,
4
no, I
weeks
went
in
to Manchester. I got an upgrade. I went from Sheffield to Manchester. I wasn't looking back.
We
at
always have to
Sheffield,
play
mate.
second fiddle to Manchester.
Oh yeah, but you've hidden behind the hill, so you're okay. That's fine.
Yeah, they get the rain.
But don't they say it's the dark side of the hill?
It is.
That's that War of the Roses thing they don't like us mentioning.
Down the road in the
Civil War.
marshes where the werewolves are.
They lost.
Yeah. Which finished in 1480 or something like that.
It's never been the same since, though. Just
Yeah.
look at it. Just look at it.
I mean, there's a definition of not being able to get over anything, isn't there?
Okay, what's it?
1480, and they're still talking about it.
88 notes playing.
I'm going to bring it back to MIDI now. I've been a bit naughty.
Yeah, good.
I've that you shouldn't do. I've got my Kenton MIDI splitter, and because it's going to take up an extra electrical port, I daisy chain stuff. I think there's about 3 or 4 equipments in the daisy chain, which is not really good, but it hasn't. It's all worked fine. It's all worked. I haven't noticed any lag whatsoever.
You can daisy chain some levels, but I think it's just the amount that you've got to be careful of, and how much MIDI data you're spewing
They
through
are
it too.
through. They are they are dedicated through, which is different.
Yeah, because some gear has an out and it has a soft through. They're the ones you have to watch out for. The gear that has the in and out but doesn't have a through, and it has the soft through, which you go into the settings and it actually literally does a software translation, which will cause latency.
No, these are all going through.
I've got it like I've got like a 15-way splitter, and because it splits, it takes one signal and literally splits it 15 ways. There's no problem with it. If you're daisy chaining, I know people talk about daisy chaining. I haven't really had too many issues with it because I use daisy chain with proper throughs. But
I think that's the key.
That's the key. Yeah, the proper throughs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay away from the soft throughs. That's the issue.
And also, when I built my studio, I made a definite decision not to go with USB MIDI. So I don't have any USB MIDI stuff in the studio that works that way. Anyway.
Well, you could.
I could, but I don't have a USB hub.
I don't know what you're scared of. What are you scared of?
Well,
Ridicule. Ridicule is nothing to be scared. Sorry.
I'm going to have to get one because I need. That's the whole reason the DJ stuff isn't plugged in. Is because the mixer needs a USB port.
Yep.
But basically, I'm tight. Basically, I went right.
Oh no, we're not going to sample that, are we?
You know what I mean? It doesn't make a sound, does it? So,
yeah.
Is it going to help me make a sound? Do I really need it? No, I'll just unplug this one here.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, look, I can say that my MIDI USB hub is working perfectly fine. And you know the hub I'm talking about. I've talked about it on the show, previous episodes before. So I've got my MPC live talking to the Blue Arp, talking to expert sleepers in Eurorack land, talking to Roland MX1, talking to Ableton, all that sort of stuff over USB. So I'm not seeing any issues at all with MIDI over USB. But I know people have issues with USB, and it's only because they don't have a decent USB hub. So get yourself, I've talked about this, there's literally an episode in my video library on my channel that talks about what a decent USB hub is.
Do you remember I will? Do you remember Will, who came on the show?
Yeah, I know Will, yeah.
He had a problem with his USB hub though.
Yeah, but he might not have a good one.
No, it was one of the two ones you get. You know what Will's studio's like. And he ended up, I think it ended up frying his deep mind. I'm not sure what, you see, that's not the reason really. I like to think, but I'm in MIDI, and that's all I have to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, now I've got the MPC, I can easily use as a MIDI USB host. That's easy because it's already there. And I haven't bought it, and it, it's kind of I trust it.
Yeah.
But no, I'm quite happy with the old DIN thing.
I need to have a chat to Will about why his DeepMind crapped itself. It probably wasn't the USB hub that made it crap itself. It was probably the DeepMind.
No, the USB hub melted, I think. Something went really, really wrong.
Right.
To the point where they...
Could be power. Could have had a power surge.
I don't know. Could be.
Yep. I mean, which is unlikely to happen on MIDI, but I will tell you this, back in 2014, I had a MOTU micro MIDI, which is the little 5-port box thing. I actually kept it for a few years because I thought one day I'd be able to fix it, but I took it apart and looked inside and went, whoa, she's not going to be fixed. She looked like Australia at the start of last year inside. But yeah, so literally MIDI can be, transmit power through bad sort of design circuits. And in this case, what ended up happening was the USB power that it took had some sort of surge, took out the whole MOTU unit, but it also sent the surge because all the electronics failed in it. It literally created a live circuit and it sent the surge all the way down the MIDI cables, and all the devices that it was connected to via MIDI had some sort of hardware failure as a result of being connected to it. And I had something like about 3 or 4 devices go down in one hit, including a MIDI card on my computer, including a synth that I had to get repaired. So yeah, so be careful. MIDI can, it wasn't MIDI that was the cause. It was the fact that the circuit, because it got fried, it created an open circuit and literally sent 240 volts down the MIDI. Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, that'd kill the opto isolators, I would imagine.
It literally melted the whole thing, yeah. So any protection that they had in there wasn't done very well. And I believe they're better these days, but this was like 2014. So yeah, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Let's talk about 5G. Anything can happen. No. COVID happens.
Is that... That's the heavy metal pedal, isn't it? Anyway, sorry.
That was good, that meme, wasn't it? The heavy metal pedal.
It was fantastic.
I love that. It was so good. So we've pretty much reached the end of Master Clock, haven't we? I think we're just having a bit of a chat now. So that's fine. We can sort of wrap this up. If anyone's got any more questions about Master Clock, let us know. But I think we're pretty good. What did I miss? Did I miss anything? Did I not cover anything? I know I didn't talk about sample, whatever it was called. Because I've never heard of it. You can only talk about what you know. So, yeah. Imagine if I didn't talk about MIDI. Oh, shit.
was gonna say, it's always
got Andrew next
always
to
going
me.
to be a bit.
Yeah, with Andrew next to you.
Yeah.
Totally forgot about it.
Yeah, just bugger him. We'll just talk about Eurorack all day.
Yeah, well, we do our timing by hitting a stick on the table, and everybody joins in. Oh no, that's a conductor. Sorry.
I thought it was an interesting remarks that were made that actually bang on 100% stable clock might not always be desirable. We are after all, sometimes we introduce a bit of swing, a bit of push, a bit of pull, and after all, you say you talk about banging with a stick. Have you ever watched what a conductor of an orchestra does? It's push and pull. But the timing is always push and pull. Well, I guess that's something that we want to do. I think we want a stability within our system, don't we? And the push and pull is something that we would choose to determine. So that was interesting. You mentioned about the delaying tracks on Ableton. I mean, Cubase on the Atari ST had delay on the tracks. You could delay them by milliseconds to compensate. But I never did. Never had to. Like Andrew was saying, that the stability of that machine was such that you didn't need to do it.
Yeah.
But then again, I was on. I did say to, I think it was Axelsoft earlier on, or it might have been Wagyu. It was Wagyu. I was only using one MIDI out from the Atari. I wasn't using multiple out ports or anything like that, which might have introduced them further problems. But yeah, we were talking about the timing issues in records. I remember sampling Our Friends Electric, the different sections of Our Friends Electric, and they're all at different tempos. They're actually, you think, they're all the same speed, and they're not. They vary considerably from, I think, by about 3 or 4 BPM from one to another, and of course that means the samples don't match up and things. That was a headache, but so sometimes absolutely rock solid timing is not necessarily 100%.
Yeah. Lisa, they want to know. This is completely changing tact. They want to know what your thoughts are on the new Novation circuits.
I'm not sure I should give them till we see them, because I don't want to upset anybody.
I did see your comments last week when we showed them on the show.
Oh, really? Novation should be sending them to you, Inky. I mean, get Calc to send. Pull some strings there.
I did message somebody saying that it's really hard to not ask questions, and they said, "Well, I can't answer them if you did," And I think I've got to wait because
it's annoying though, isn't it? Because there's people that we know that definitely have the units in hand. Like we know Zev's got Lupop's got them, and we know that Bo's got them because they're in the middle of making videos for them right now.
Yeah, you thought they could have bunged a couple my way, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I want to know things like...
Come on, Cal.
Is a synth engine is a synth engine the same? And how far is that sampler going? Because it's got a reverse on it. There's a little button that says reverse. I need to know whether it's got a start knob on it as well. So if I turn the start knob to the left, does that reverse the sample? And that reverse button, does that reverse the sample, or does it reverse a pattern? Because one of my favourite things about samplers is to reverse all samples.
Oh, yeah.
It's the first thing I with a sample is I go, what does it sound like reversed? And that is what I'm looking for, because only 3 circuits or 2, I might sell one. I don't see what I'm going to get out of the new set unless it's got a new synth engine. It's got 2 MIDI tracks, but that's why I bought a second circuit, because I thought, these could be good for MIDI tracks. So I like the idea. I don't want to say too much because, I'm still hoping for them to...
We don't really know, do we?
Yeah.
We don't know. What we don't know is we don't know. Anyone want to buy a circuit, by the way? I've got one that's for sale. I'm not joking. I've got one for sale. I don't need it
Selling
anymore.
one of mine.
It's surplus to what I need. I don't need it.
I'm keeping two because I think the MIDI, the way they work live, look up to different synths. I can't beat it for live. For making a track, ready, steady, go. If I put a couple of synths, if I've got 4 synths, 2 circuits, I don't even have to MIDI them up. So I just press go on both of them at the same time. I can put samples and I've got a track within less than a minute. And I don't know anything else I can do that on. I've realised I probably don't need 3.
Well, you'd have 4, just get mine.
That's where you get a mono station.
I've got 2 of them
Lisa's
as well.
got one.
She's got mono stations.
I've got 2 of them.
Now,
The mono station is controlling the TD3.
That was genius. Honestly, mono station was a marriage between a base station 2 and a circuit. That was genius. That was genius.
And everything everything on it, you can just record.
Yeah.
So if you hit record and wiggle anything, you know, it records it.
Records
so
it, yeah.
you are the mod matrix. It's up to you. You know.
It's so good.
That's a good description. Yeah.
Yeah.
You are the
become
matrix.
the moderator. Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Anderson.
Oh.
What's the girl's name in the Matrix?
Yes,
I keep forgetting her name. Neo. Is it
Trinity.
Neo? No, Trinity.
Trinity.
Yeah.
Trinity. There's 3 of her.
So, Inky, you can change your nick now to Trinity. You are the Matrix. All right, I think we should
Trinity
wrap up.
of
I think we should wrap the show up
circuits.
because Andrew's like it's probably hit past 2 in the morning for him over there in Queensland.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh, is it?
It's like it's 2:16 in the morning over there. 2:07.
Kept him up late.
Yeah. And we really appreciate all the efforts that he did for the show. Do you know that today that he actually set up that MIDI device that he showed us before? Just for the show today.
Yes,
I reckon that is so nice.
Built it well.
Yeah. Well done. Good on
Oh,
you.
no,
Well, I had
you
all the
helped
parts
it.
there.
It's been on the list, has it, for some time, Andrew?
Yeah, about 4 years.
The runs has really helped you achieve a little thing that, you know, needed to get done.
Rains is a bad influence on Andy.
I was supposed to be working today, and I got distracted doing that. You know?
And you couldn't go to your modular meet because of lockdown either. So
No, I know.
yeah,
But, you know,
yeah.
there you go.
Oh,
Still
thanks,
going.
Wagoo. He's just dropped a beer shout for us, guys. Geez, we're gonna go a lot of beers when I go over to Europe when I'm allowed to travel again. Jeez. But yeah, thanks so much.
It's really expensive in where he lives. Isn't all this would be one beer? Doesn't he live in Sweden?
Switzerland, isn't it? Do they live in
Switzerland, yeah.
Switzerland? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm thinking of Sweden. No,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm thinking of.
Switzerland's pretty
Sorry.
expensive.
He's
Last
got
time
beer
I
runners.
went there, it was pretty expensive. He does. By the way, speaking of beers, I've actually finished mine. Never got to show mine. This is about your neck of woods, Andrew. I have decided to go with Burley Big Head.
Burley Big Head. No carb lager.
It's a no carb
Burley
lager.
Big Head.
Oh,
What a great beer, hey? Oh, jeez. And I'll tell you what, it was actually pretty nice drop.
Which Burley is it?
Burley Heads.
Burley Heads, which is like southern Queensland, which is very close to
Oh, I see. It's an
the New
Australian.
South Wales border. Yeah, it's a Queensland beer.
Yeah.
You haven't got an imported
About
IPA
it-
from.
Nah.
No, about an hour and a half away from here.
So,
Or an hour away from here.
so the good news about that one is it doesn't make you fat because it's got no carbs in it. That's technically what they're saying.
Which
so.
is bollocks. Oh, I mean, rubbish.
All right.
But you feel better about it.
I'm gonna do a Top Gear finish, and on that
Burley Big Head.
woeful note, we should end this show.
Behave, Wagyu.
See you later, everyone. Same back time,
Yeah,
same
take
back
care.
channel next week. Bye.
Bye all.